75 years old, and I still wake up with a little guy saluting me.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy.
Come on, let's wake up.
Gotta wake up.
Are you sure you want to wake up to this?
Come on now, wake up.
I can't wait to wake up.
Wake up, idiot.
All right, it's a Tuesday. We are back, and we're broadcasting live, as always, from the DriveHubler.com studio. He's Kevin Bowen. I'm Andy Sweeney. Elijah Roberson, no Mark Dighton, hanging out with us today here on the Wake Up Call on the Fan. Hopefully everyone had a fantastic Christmas weekend. Maybe you're still off work. I don't know. It's Christmas Day Part 2, I guess, around many households in the area. And KB, a good morning to you. I sit here and I look at you in the eyes and I realize we're going to have to talk about a stinky Colts performance. Not too much better from the Pacers. Hopefully you and yours had a good weekend. How'd it go?
I'll be honest. I feel like emotionally drained, hungover. Elijah's like, you look tired. I'm like, Elijah, why don't you go bleep? No.
He's a dad with 2 young kids, Elijah, okay? And there was fights and crying and bad sports all weekend.
Yeah, and the bad sports, I think, dominated certainly Saturday into Sunday there of what you saw. The Pacers now loser 6 of 7. They are in Houston tonight. Rick Carlisle will join us here coming up. We'll bump him an hour with them on Central Time. And then, Sunday, Andy, I thought that was the worst performance of the season. Given the opponent, I think is context that you need to put in there. I'd found it odd that Atlanta, well, I guess maybe not odd, but the Falcons' biggest lead all season had been 13 points, and they were pretty much in control of that margin through the entire second half, obviously winning that game by 19. Most points they've scored all season. Just a horrendous day tackling. Offensively, what a great day for Michael Pittman's contract negotiations.
No kidding.
And I think your offensive line has just been too Jekyll and Hyde here late in the season. It's a group that's built to be your strength, and you can't have the up and down nature that now we've seen, especially in these last 2 road games. Cincinnati a couple weeks ago and then Atlanta on Sunday. So 2 weeks to go. If you beat both the Raiders and Texans at home, that should be enough. It's not a guarantee, though, and we'll get more into this as the week moves along. But still, the margin for error is thinning, like my hair used to.
So, I've just looked at different scenarios for the Colts, and there's no way for us to give that to the people on radio. It's so damn confusing. It really is. All the different things that could happen in all the different seedings, and it wasn't, I want to get into this. It wasn't the worst weekend because of what happened around the Colts. There were some losers. Obviously, Denver losing a big part of that. Cincinnati, what happened to them, the Texans and C.J. Stroud. But, it is rare, and this is how I feel about leaving the Atlanta game on Sunday, KB. It is rare that you leave a game and usually you can pick out a couple positives. Right. That guy had 3 sacks, or, such and such made a couple big plays down the field, or, Juju Brents had 2 interceptions and a forced fumble. There would be something to where we could at least fit in between all the negativity, some positivity. I don't see any of that coming from Sunday. Do you? I don't see not 1%. I mean, they didn't tackle well. I mean, the game was in Minshew's hands. He didn't play one of his good. He didn't play well at all. They couldn't run the ball. We went in talking about Atlanta's defense, and they couldn't run. They couldn't run the ball. A costly, and you wrote about this, a costly penalty on special teams, which led to a touchdown. Just a mess from players and coaches and being dialed in or lack thereof. All the things you wanted to see this weekend from the Colts, they didn't do. And then, we talked about if there was a game to lose, okay, it's an NFC game, yada, yada. I understand. But still, you are the Colts and you are playing for something, and you're a bunch of underdogs, quite frankly, with a backup quarterback and, unproven guys who are trying to make their way defensively. I don't think there's a redeeming quality about what we saw, other than if you're a Colts fan, they were so bad, they can't be that bad this Sunday in Lucas Oil against the Raiders. Either way, just a really bad performance on Sunday, really disappointing.
Yeah, it's funny. I do a podcast, and on the podcast recapping Colts games, I always do what I liked and what I didn't like. Because I think our show kind of indicates that on the Mondays, and now today being a Tuesday, and recapping games, it's never all good. It's never all bad. That's just kind of how NFL life is. You know, if you are the Raiders yesterday and you just beat the Chiefs, I mean, what a great win for your franchise. This and that. Well, on a list of what Raiders fans would not have liked, I would say Aiden O'Connell not completing a pass in the final 3 quarters is probably near the top of that list. Like, it was a great win, but again, as they project to Sunday with the Colts,
Right.
Aiden O'Connell's going to have to complete more than one pass.
Right. Like, you understand
in
what
the
your
final
team's
3
about.
quarters.
Sure.
So if I look back on Sunday with the Colts, I have one individual that I'm going to put in the I liked category, okay? Un individual, and that would be Kylan Granson.
Yeah, he had a good
5
game.
catches for 62
I guess
yards.
he would be the one, yeah.
With how the Colts tight ends have produced this season, that's a
great game.
And throw Will Mallory, I guess, in that list, 4 for 47. That's it. I mean, your pass catchers, I would say your wideouts, not named Michael Pittman Jr., of course. I thought had several drops of very catchable balls. Was Minshew the Gardner Minshew we're used to in 2023? Probably. But still, I thought there were some moments where Minshew delivered balls in the vicinity of, balls that should be caught. And whether it's Josh Downs or Alec Pierce or DJ Montgomery, those guys could not come down with them. And again, I go back to the earlier point, Andy, of why I think it's the most disappointing effort of the season is given the opponent. We all saw the crowd shots. That place was half full. That place was a library. And when all week long it is the future at head coach and quarterback in question, and post-game, I found this, pretty funny, honestly. Jeff Schultz in Atlanta is their version of, Greg Doyle or Bob Kravitz back in the day.
Atlanta Journal-Constitution, right?
There you go.
The
So he is
AJC, Elijah.
their head columnist, and his story after the game was to follow Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, to his car and ask him what the future holds for Arthur Smith.
It's a good column.
So you just got outclassed by a team that in their market, their lead columnist is following the owner to the car, and the owner is non-committal on the head coach's future. Like, that, to me, this is not the 49ers or the Ravens that you just lost, or the Dolphins, and whoever you think defines quality football team, and the missed tackling. I just thought it was an abomination of, and I know that some of these guys were drafted very high, but it's not like Atlanta's been doing this at all this season. Again, they have not been San Francisco offensively, which I know as someone that watched the 49ers and maybe had Brock Purdy in a must-have fantasy football game last night, I am none too pleased in this Tuesday morning. But they have not been Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey.
Did he have positive points last night for you? There's no way he could have.
I stopped checking at halftime.
Okay, I was about to say, with the 4 interceptions, there's no way. There's absolutely no way he was on the positive side of the ledger.
In the opening drive, he's got like 70-some yards. I'm like, this is great. The other guy had Christian McCaffrey. I'm like, this is perfect. He's not even throwing it to him. And boom, the rest of the game unfolds how it does. So, again, playoff margin thinning to say the least. In simplest terms, Andy, and it's not this simple, but this is kind of how I'll boil it down to the final 2 weeks. If you win these last 2 games, you should be in. You're very likely to be in. It's probably the better way to put it. Now, if you end up tied with Cincinnati and it's just you two, you're out. They have the head-to-head tiebreaker. Now, Cincinnati's 8-7. They are, I believe it's at Kansas City, and I want to say then it's Cleveland in the final week of the season for the Bengals. I would need to double check that.
Yeah,
is that right?
It's in Kansas City, which used to mean a lot more than it does now.
I was going to say.
They'll still be an underdog, but still.
The Kansas City team we've seen here lately, I'll be very curious about that one. And Cleveland, they could be locked into a seed. So that could mean Myles Garrett's resting, Amari Cooper's resting. So that is, I think in simplest terms, what needs to happen is you need to win out, and you need to avoid a head-to-head with Cincinnati. If you get multiple teams involved, if Pittsburgh gets involved, if, whatever, Jacksonville gets involved for some reason, that would favor you because then you get into conference record, and that's where the Colts do continue to have a nice tiebreaker. If the Colts split, you're going to need worlds and worlds of help, and it's probably unlikely that you make the playoffs. Obviously, if you lose both, you are definitely out of the postseason. So, there will be a little bit closer look into these playoff scenarios, situations, et cetera, but I think in simplest terms, it's this. Finish ahead of Houston, win the last 2, and avoid at all costs being just you and Cincinnati together in a tiebreaker, because you have a head-to-head over Pittsburgh. Potentially if you beat the Raiders, you have a head-to-head over them, but some of the other scenarios that involve just Cincinnati are not in your favor. The other ones are in your favor.
I am stunned at the egg that they laid, KB. I guess that's what it is. I just
Coal in the stocking.
I mean, they just got completely manhandled for such large parts of that game.
Well,
they
and
just didn't do anything right.
I think what also stings is you couldn't have scripted a better start.
No,
You started with the ball.
You finally get up 7-0.
You go right down the field with great balance. You know, you had Mallory a couple times.
Oh, Jonathan Taylor's
first two
back.
carries goes for 19 yards.
Then 31 yards the rest of the way. Is that what the stat was? I need to look it up. I think you wrote about it in others.
Yeah, like 16 for 21.
It was 16 for 31 the rest of the way. It's just, I mean, I don't know. You dropped an interception. You had yet another special teams issue that cost you. I sit here and I sound like I'm stammering for words. I mean, Atlanta averaged over 6 yards per play against that defense. They just didn't bring anything. And then coming up here, we'll have our check down in 7:30 as well. Gardner Minshew's comments after the game where he had to come into the locker room and give the guys a speech. I mean, I guess they're a young team, but I guess these are things with us sitting here in the radio studio we don't know. And that is, were they not dialed in that game at all, understanding, yes, you had a subpar opponent that has a backup quarterback, but you know what? You have a backup quarterback. You've been playing with a backup quarterback and been playing good football a lot of the time with a backup quarterback. I mean, it is. I mean, Kyle Pitts scored a touchdown. Kyle Pitts doesn't do anything, seemingly. We say, hey, where's Kyle Pitts at these days? I am confused how this team was so much to play the underdog, chip on their shoulder type mentality that they've had, KB, that they would be the ones that would underestimate, that they would be the ones that would not play sharp football. And, you know, I tell you, the Alec Pierce drop and the Josh Downs drop, both of those guys, first down opportunities. Just you think of, you know, early in the game, you think of the special teams penalty early in the game. I'm stammering here because they just were not dialed in any facet of the game. And I just can't believe from the team that we have seen this season, they've been beat. I felt like they've at least been dialed in, right? I thought what we saw on Sunday in Atlanta was the first time that we saw that. Does that make sense? That we just saw a team that just didn't have anything at all.
Yeah, and again, I'll stress this, given the opponent. You know, I think Cincinnati, I mean, even without Burrow, they've proven themselves with a lot of guys, you know, skill-wise. They certainly have some defensive players of note. Atlanta, while they have these high draft picks, Andy, they haven't done this to anybody all year long. And part of me kind of walks away from Sunday, and there's a little bit of loser mentality with this, but part of me is like, are the Colts just an average football team that's exceeded expectations, but also feasted on a very manageable schedule?
I mean, they are. I mean, to a certain extent.
Probably an accurate description. And again, based off where they were win-loss record at the start of the year, I guess that's still like a step in the right direction.
Oh, well, I mean, it's why Steichen could be coach of the year, is because, of course, this team was picked to win. I mean, the over-under was 3.5.
Kevin Stefanski, no questions
understand,
asked.
but you know what I'm saying? Until Sunday, you know, we had that conversation. I mean, I don't know. You look around the AFC, there's a lot of regular. I mean, there's some people doing not very much with quite a bit.
I want to be clear. When I say that, like, this is to be expected a bit. This is just kind of an average football team that, again, has exceeded preseason expectations, but they have feasted largely on a very manageable schedule. You look to Sunday, in the two areas that you should not have grades on a scale, there are some areas that you do, I think, grade this football team on a scale. The two areas where you don't,
offensive line,
O-line, and defense, that defense is healthy. I mean, that is a healthy defense at really every level of the unit, and that was an awful display of tackling, awful display of playmaking, and Atlanta just methodically building these big scoring drives. I mean, Andy, we were talking 7, 8, 9 double-digit play scoring drives, first half, second half, and then again, offensive line, the Jekyll and Hyde nature to it, not just from Blake Freeland. I thought that was Freeland's probably worst game of his rookie season, but I thought there were other guys in that line that did not step up in any way, shape, or form. So plenty to get to on the Colts and that game in Atlanta on Sunday. Again, 29-10. Little Gas have a good first Christmas?
Yeah, man, how's everything? He doesn't know what's going on, but he's getting gifts and everything. And, I told people, don't get him clothes because this dude is flying through clothes right now. He gets to wear something about one time before his legs are too long for it. How's everything in the Bowen household? Everything good?
The Barbie house assembling took
How did
about
that go?
45 minutes on
Well, that's not
Christmas
bad.
Eve. It went well, and then Max got a Nerf hoop, and he's finishing at the rim very well in the bathtub. So
Is he? Okay.
Nerf hoop side of the bathtub.
Oh, I love the Nerf hoop,
so
man.
yeah, he's doing. We're gonna work on the left hand, I think, tonight, but he's doing a nice job finishing.
Well,
at
I
the
think
rim.
Little Gas is a lefty, too.
Now, how about this? Max Bowen has picked 7 straight Colts games, right?
Did he? Okay, so he picked this one?
He had the Falcons.
Oh, he had Atlanta. I'm trying to remember now. All the videos are starting to run together.
Well,
I can't remember if he picked up the Atlanta helmet or the Indianapolis
He was
helmet.
shirt off in this one. He went with
no.
the Falcons. He had the Bengals 2 weeks ago. That is 7. You imagine? I mean, Vegas should hire him
Well,
now.
can we do this? Can he start making the pick earlier so we can just copycat off him?
Yeah,
Because
tail
I have
him,
no
right?
idea. As a gambler,
Yeah,
if you tell me there is a 1 or 2 year old kid who has picked 7, you know who I will follow into the fire? I
Yes,
will follow Max
100%.
Bowen into that fire.
Yes, I'm waiting for letters from fans saying thank you for the 15-month-old who has gotten 7 straight Colts games correct.
It's just disappointing on Sunday. I think that's just it. It didn't have to go down like that. If you're a Colts fan, you're thinking it didn't have to go
Especially again,
down.
after that start. Like, to me, that was you punch a team that's already kind of on the ropes in the face, and then how easy was that first Atlanta TD drive?
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
you're
easy
mentioning-
third down pickup. Bijan Robinson in the open field,
He
and
looked
Kyle
good.
Pitts on a busted coverage. Boom, boom, boom. It's 7-7. Now there's life. And by the way, Heineke does have a little magic to him. How about the block he threw on Juju Brents?
Well, let's see how he does next week in
I know,
Chicago.
I mean, it's not a
in
lot,
that
but-
game, he had a little bit of Christmas magic sprinkled on him
He can
in that
sprinkle
game.
it a little bit there. Pacers Rockets tonight, 8 o'clock. It is the streaky Houston Rockets, and it's a Pacers team that's honestly streaking just in a negative way. Losers of 6 of 7. Rick Carlisle going to join us here coming up at 9 o'clock. We hope you all had a great Christmas weekend, great extended weekend. Thanks for spending this Tuesday morning with us. I'm Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney, Elijah Roberson in for Mark Dykton. Thanks for tuning in. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Query and Company. on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, check down time reminder coming up at 9 o'clock. Rick Carlisle going to be joining us. A mess in Atlanta. 29-10 your final. The Colts fall by 19. They go to 8-7, still in the playoffs. But we'll be talking all week what needs to happen, what doesn't need to happen for them to make the postseason. Postgame, Shane Steichen, the loss in Atlanta, not good.
I don't know. We got to look at ourselves hard in the mirror, obviously, after a loss like that, starting with myself, and get those things corrected. You know, you have a big win the week prior, and then you go do that. What we did today, we can't have it. And obviously, we got 2 guaranteed left to us, and we got to get it cleaned up in a hurry. And they're at home, so I know we will get those things cleaned up. I have full confidence in the guys in there that will get it cleaned up for the last 2.
Yeah, 2 games left. Raiders at home coming up on Sunday, and then we'll see where the Texans game, when it's going to be. It's going to be in Lucas Oil. How long does the NFL have here? When should we find out? Would that be this week?
No. It'll be
or
late.
would it be next week?
Yeah, it'll be late Sunday night. So there's no Monday night game this week. We'll get a Thursday nighter. I think it's Browns-Jets. We'll get a Saturday game. I want to say that's Lions-Cowboys. We'll have the full Sunday slate. There'll be a Sunday nighter. So I would say sometime during Sunday Night Football,
probably,
we'll get an announcement exactly of when that Colts-Texans game, along with all Week 18 games are. By the way, Colts 3-point favorite over the Raiders here early in the week.
Yeah, I see it. And what the Raiders did in Kansas City may confuse things. We'll see. We'll talk about that game. Quickly, one more from Steichen. Steichen, after that first drive, 13 plays, 75 yards for the Colts, took 5.5 minutes off the clock. We're thinking, okay, it's 7-0. From then on, the offense looked pretty bad. What happened after that initial drive?
Great question. If I had the answer for you, I'd give you a perfect answer. Credit to, the Falcons. They did a good job up front with their defensive line, some of the things they were doing. But again, it starts with myself. I got to be better for the guys going forward.
Yeah, if I could answer that, your O-line got whipped. Period. Jekyll and Hyde offensive line, we've seen it 2 out of the last 3 weeks for how much they dominated against Pittsburgh, particularly the final few quarters. We did not see that in Cincinnati. We did not see it in Atlanta at all. We will get into Michael Pittman's situation, Andy. That was a big news item on Saturday. I'm sure a lot of people were in the midst of celebrating their respective, Christmas.
It changed the game.
Yeah, Christmas.
Completely changed the game.
Eve celebrations there. So we'll touch on where things stand for Michael Pittman and how big his loss was here in Houston. All right, Pacers in Houston tonight. On Saturday night, it was a loss to the Orlando Magic. It was pretty much typical Magic against the Pacers. That is a bunch of wings that, Indiana can't keep in front of them and can't really defend without fouling. And I think that's a big topic. I don't know how much Rick Carlisle wants to entertain that sort of question, but right now, the defense is an issue. Defending without fouling is an issue for this Pacers team. They have lost 6 of 7. They are now back to 500 on the year. That is 14-14. They will take on the Houston Rockets tonight. Andy, how about this for the Rockets? Their season has gone like this. Lost 3 in a row. Won 6 in a row. Lost 3, won 2, lost 3, won 5, lost 3, and now they've won 2. They have not had a win and a loss back-to-back and gone back-to-back format all season long. They have been a very streaky team. They're young. They're athletic. Sengun, their young center, a pretty good player. So I know the Pacers and the Rockets don't match up a whole lot, but we'll keep you updated on where things stand for that. 8 o'clock tip tonight, and the Knicks coming up in Madison Square Garden on Thursday for the Pacers.
I want to talk about this later on, but what's your level of worry for the Pacers? Because mine's at about a 9 right now.
And again, we said this a little bit last week. Just look at January's schedule.
I'm that's what I was looking at. You mentioned just Houston. Just go down the list on their schedule. You mentioned New York, 2 against Milwaukee, 2 against Boston coming up, a couple different games against Atlanta as well.
And I misspoke there. It's at Chicago Thursday. The Knicks come up on Saturday. That is actually back at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So this week, it'll be, again, tonight in Houston. Thursday, they've got the Bulls. That is in Chicago, also an 8 o'clock tip. It'll be the Knicks on Saturday. And then coming up, January 1st, January 3rd, you've got the Milwaukee Bucks.
All right, give us one more swoosh, Elijah. Just going back, I'm going to give them some love. Butler basketball went on the road and lost to Providence
that
in
was
overtime.
brutal,
I don't know
man.
how much you watched of this, but Thad Matta, next time,
watched a lot of it, yeah.
next time we have Coach on, he's going to be lamenting how that game ended. Butler had a chance. They were up 2. They were up 3. They allowed a 3 in the final seconds to send it to overtime. After the game, Matta did talk about it that, well, we were going to foul, but we felt it got too late in the clock. And you know exactly, if you watch the game, exactly what he was talking about. So a tough one, 10-3 now on the season, 1-1 in the Big East. But boy, that would have been a big game to win on the road against Kim English. There you go, and Providence. And I guess Butler, I mean, they had all sorts of travel issues. Didn't get there to right before the game. Just an absolute disaster.
They took off 7:30 in
That's
the morning
unbelievable.
on Saturday. It was a noon tip. Yeah, like you said, down 15-0. And boy, road wins are so hard to come by.
I thought they were going to win the game.
And
that's
is
a tough one.
golden opportunity. By the way, let's give away a pair of Butler UConn tickets later today. I know it's maybe not the biggest audience listening on this Tuesday, December 26th, but why not extend Christmas one more day? We'll do that here coming up a little bit later in the show. Lastly, other Week 16 items for you, Andy Sweeney. Trevor Lawrence continues to get hurt, and the Jags continue to lose. Now, the Colts and Texans have no ability to take advantage of that, but Jacksonville does end the year with Carolina and Tennessee, but the Trevor Lawrence situation is certainly something to monitor. Anything else stand out to you from yesterday or this weekend in the NFL?
I mean, for me, Jacksonville is, I've called them frauds, and it looked like I was wrong. They looked like they were one of the best teams in the entire AFC, and they're falling on their face. And that's one thing we're not even mentioning. If you're the Colts or just a poorly timed injury to C.J. Stroud, is the AFC South is there for you, man. The Jags do not want to win the AFC South. And then just to me, I know what happened last night. I mean, Brock Purdy was bad. We know he can be bad. But to me, I look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs are a fundamentally broken offense. It's not just one game. I mean, they are a bad offense. We talk about what Michael Pittman has meant. I'm not going to go all the way back a few years ago to Tyreek Hill, but, they've taken some swings at some guys. Sky Moore, they've taken a swing at. Have the Chiefs, Kadarius Toney, they've tried, and those guys just aren't delivering. And then the other thing, we're talking about teams that had everything to play for. I mean, if you're the Denver Broncos and you're losing at home to the New England Patriots,
Unbelievable.
that's a rough one on Christmas Eve. I mean, that's the way you go. I mean, that's coal in the stocking. They tried to come back in that game, but I mean, that is a game where they had everything to play for. That was a good result for the Colts on Sunday night.
So right now, with 2 weeks to go in the season, in the AFC, the Ravens and the Dolphins have both clinched. How about the Raiders could still win the AFC West?
I love it. I absolutely love it. Man, the Chiefs are a broken offensive team. And KB, they are. It's unbelievable.
You have the 49ers, Eagles, Cowboys, and Lions. So still 5 playoff spots to be decided in the AFC. In the NFC, you've got 3 playoff spots still to be decided there. And Patrick Mahomes, we know this, assuming Kansas City does make the playoffs, which they still are likely to do, he will have to play a road game at some point if they are going to advance. Obviously, they could be at home for their first playoff game, but if they're going to advance, it'll be the first time in Mahomes' NFL history that he will have to play a road playoff game. All right, on the other side, that Michael Pittman Jr. situation, it looked like he was going to play against the Falcons, was cleared initially by an independent neurologist. What happened after that? How big was his loss? We'll explain that and some Gus Bradley chatter coming up on the other side as well. It's a wake-up call with KB and Andy right here on a Tuesday morning. Thanks for spending it with us.
The Pacers go
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on this Tuesday on the Wake Up Call here in Indianapolis. The Fan got you dialed in. Local shows today. Query and Company coming your way at noon. JMV at 3 o'clock. All the coverage of the Pacers in H-Town, that's what they call it, in Houston. Last time I was in Houston was the Final Four, KB. I went there from Radio Row.
I hate Houston.
I ate at a steakhouse by myself. How does that sound? At the bar by myself.
That sounds very difficult to do.
It was glorious. It actually, you know what it was? It was late at night in an Astros game, got out, and I'm like, all the sports bars were full. I was thinking, where could I go where one man could just sit? And I'm like, you know what? A steakhouse. It was busy, but there was one lonely seat there, and your boy took
Way
it.
too spread out for me, Houston.
Oh, you think so? It's like two different downtowns. It's a wild city. It's a growing city. And it's going to be Rockets and Pacers tonight on The Fan. Reacting, big weekend. The Colts losers on Sunday to the Atlanta Falcons. We'll keep talking about that. And then on Saturday, this really, if we would have known, not that our picks matter, but I would not have felt the way that I felt, and I'm sure you are the same, about this game had we known that Michael Pittman was not going to play. He did travel with the team. He was there. He was, had sunglasses on indoors. I would imagine that's, because of lights and all the different things that can happen with a brain injury, concussion, whatever it may be. What is your read of the situation here? Because it looked like he was going to play. He was cleared. It was good news. And then boom, on Saturday, he's going to go with the team, but starting to have symptoms again. He doesn't play on Sunday. And you see the top two leading, I could say pass catchers for the Colts were tight ends. Will Mallory and Granson there, both guys not usually at the top of the box score when it comes to yards and everything else. What is your read of the situation? A big week. They got to get Pittman back, or we saw that defense and what that defense can do there in Vegas.
Well, again, it's very unusual to see a week unfold like it did for a guy in concussion protocol, and then all of a sudden, the day of travel, he's ruled out due to having, I thought the term that Shane Steichen used postgame was relapse into the concussion protocol. So basically, this is how the week unfolded for Michael Pittman Jr. We know he exited the game against the Steelers due to that big hit. He has some memory loss from that hit. Doesn't necessarily easy for me to say.
Nope.
Geez, on this December 26th. Doesn't remember.
No, it's scary.
All of the details.
No, it's
which
scary.
Is very
He
scary.
said he woke up. Like, he doesn't remember. He laid out for the ball. Next thing he remembered, he was looking up, and players were looking down on him, and he knew something had happened, obviously, at that point. That's scary.
And his wife and his, children were in the locker room, and he was, very obviously shooken up about, all of a sudden seeing them and seeing their emotions and things like that. So he, with the extra day last week, the Colts, of course, had a Saturday game before the Falcons won. He was able to practice, and he practiced on Thursday and Friday, was not in a non-contact jersey, so he was good to go and cleared the independent neurologist, which is the final step of the concussion protocol, on Friday. And then the Colts find out on Saturday that Pittman had, developed a headache, and all of a sudden, this is, again, after the clearance of the independent neurologist, which is very unusual to see a guy get through all of those steps, get the final clearance, and then 24 hours before the game, he now has a symptom to where he goes back into the protocol. And as you said, he did travel to Atlanta, which part of me thought that was a bit unusual, but he did travel. Like you pointed out, he was wearing, sunglasses in an indoor stadium, and I don't.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's the lights or what. Yeah,
the sensitivity of being there from a light standpoint. The Fox crew showed him quite often. He will go back into concussion protocol. So, he still certainly has a chance to pass through that and be ready to go. We have seen Ryan Kelly. This happened to him a couple of times this season. The difference being, Andy, and I'm pretty sure on this, I don't think Kelly ever got full clearance. Like, he would get to step 3, maybe even through step 4. He would practice, but I don't think he ever got independent neurologist clearance, and then all of a sudden he's ruled out after that. I think he just failed kind of the final step with this. So obviously the Pittman storyline continues to be front and center heading into this week. And if you are his agent, as sick as it sounds, you have to absolutely have loved the offensive output that the Colts put out there on Sunday without your client. It was an absolute no-show, especially from the outside wideouts, which, again, I think that is the key thing to remember. Andy, Alec Pierce plays every single offensive snap. He has 3 catches in the game. We talked about the important drop that he had as well. DJ Montgomery plays 61 offensive snaps. So
has 1 catch.
Huge number for him. He has 1 catch. And this goes back to a storyline we had in training camp a little bit. Remember when the Colts kept just 4 wideouts on their 53-man roster? And the Ashton Dulin season-ending injury during training camp was something that was noted. They just lack outside wideout depth. Isaiah McKenzie and that suspension, that doesn't really factor in here. We're talking, again, taller outside wideouts. Pierce and Montgomery. You combine their stats, Andy. They played over 130 snaps. They combined for 4 catches for 30-some yards.
38 yards.
Michael Pittman Jr. does that in 1/2.
I know.
And so,
might do
again,
it in 1 quarter.
This is where you're getting at in not only the importance to him to your offense, but just in general why, and you've heard it from me certainly for years now, why I think wideout depth is lacking. Quality wideout depth is lacking. And this is obviously a huge storyline as you enter the offseason with Michael Pittman Jr. in a contract year on top of that. So, again, certainly to me, the Jekyll and Hyde nature to your O-line. We'll get into the defense here in a second. But, boy, did you feel the loss of Pittman.
Yeah, you did, and I would have probably picked the Colts to lose this game had we known Pittman on Friday was going to be out. We took it for granted, right? Well, he's passed through everything. He's good to go. I mean, to me, there's a number of things here. I don't understand. I'm not saying this is wrong. I want to be clear. I don't understand if Michael Pittman is dealing with these headaches and is dealing with symptoms from that massive hit. Listen, I'm not hating on him for being out. He took a massive hit. These are brain injuries these guys have. So if he needs time, by God, take your time. Why is he traveling?
Yeah, and
that's what I don't understand.
Again, I was told that he woke up with some sort of headache, pain, however you want to describe it. So I was a little surprised that he did travel.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that he was there with the team because, hey, if it's that bad and if it's bad enough to where lights are bothering you, you don't need to be in a stadium like that. I mean, I guess you could say, well, he's going to help the teammates out, but all of that is... I mean, that didn't happen. It obviously didn't happen with what happened.
All of your neurologist-based doctors traveling, and you want him to be around them again.
Yeah, I just don't, I'm not gonna harp on that. I just was surprised. It's not an ankle injury. It's not Anthony Richardson traveling with the team after having a shoulder injury. There's a number of other things. They obviously don't trust Jonathan Taylor right now catching the ball with that thumb. With that hand, I mean, it must be something. He was not involved in the passing game very much at all. And then this is, to me, there are moments of clarity with a season, whether this be Pittman's contract himself or just what they need at that position going into this offseason. Every team needs something, right? You need a defensive lineman. You need a tight end. Some teams need a quarterback. We need all these different things that we've talked with the Colts about. But they need Michael Pittman back bad, and they need somebody else.
No, without question.
I mean, they need somebody else. And this is not me getting on Alec Pierce, but everyone falls over themselves to tell me how, well, he plays every snap, and what do the coaches say, and everything like that. And all of that's fine, but I feel like he's a blocking wide receiver.
Well, he is a blocking wideout with a weapon to impact the game down the field.
Which he did one time. They got the pass interference in the first quarter.
I just think we just need to describe Pierce accurately. He's not going to be this dominant underneath wideout. I mean, he's not. That's where Pittman, I think, really excels, of a key possession guy that can routinely make those plays for you and use his physicality in that nature. That's just not going to be Pierce's calling. And again, I've said this before about Alec Pierce, and certainly we touched on it after the Tennessee game when he had those big plays over the top. With Anthony Richardson, I do think Alec Pierce can be an effective deep ball type of guy for you because that's where Richardson excels as a thrower. But to act like he's anything more than that, in particular with a quarterback like Gardner Minshew, would be foolish. So that is why you cannot, I will say this so often, Andy, and I've said it so often, you can't skimp, you can't shortcut in building around Anthony Richardson. So that's why you have to add to it.
But didn't
and
it slap
Sunday
him in the face?
Was a reminder.
Yeah, I think it was a slap in the face.
Because it's the first game we haven't seen Pittman this year.
It was a slap in the face of, okay, Michael Pittman means this much, but now here are the other guys with Pittman not in the lineup. So it's not just his 8 catches, 100 yards, and perhaps a touchdown during the game. It's not even that. It's how everyone else look. It's the trickle-down effect of that offense without him. And boy, I thought it was staring Chris Ballard right in the face. Listen, Ballard's done a good enough job this year to have this team 2 games away. They're still in the playoffs if they were to start today, and they have been that way for a number of weeks. But you see sometimes a glaring need. Hell, the Chiefs are going through it. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been this big bad team, they're off the Super Bowl and everything else. They've been able to let a guy like Tyreek Hill go and everything else. It has slapped them in the face that what they have tried to do at that position is not good enough. And now you see how life after Michael Pittman can be. To me, you need Pittman and somebody else to feel better about yourself.
I don't think it's like that crazy of a thought, Andy, to think, right now Baltimore is arguably the best team in the NFL. Maybe they are. And what is the biggest change for the Ravens this year?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, they heavily
Odell, Zay
invested
Flowers
in wideout. I mean, heavily. And they've needed it.
Think Lamar's going to win the MVP?
I would probably still vote Christian McCaffrey, but I
think Lamar's probably going to win it.
Yeah, I mean,
probably.
It's a quarterback award.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest there.
Purdy was bad last night.
Christian McCaffrey, to me, probably deserves it. I want to flip over to the Colts defense. And this, to me, is the one of you don't have excuses for that unit's effort on Sunday. And I think it's a laundry list of things, but I'll start with the poor tackling. I cannot recall a Colts team that had so many tackling issues in a game. Atlanta, and I've got the box score right here. I was thumbing through it before the show started just to double check. Atlanta, Andy, had 9 different guys record a play over 10 yards. This was not just Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts dominating the game. This was think about that. 9 different guys had plays of at least 10 yards.
Well, it's Cordell Patterson. It's guys like that haven't played a lot. But Van Jefferson had a play over 10 yards as well.
Scotty Miller had a big play over 10 yards. And they had 3 of them that had runs and catches over 10 yards. So in total, 12 different plays of more than 10 yards. This is not an offense that's been potent at all. Like I said to lead off the show, their biggest lead all season was 13 points in a game. The 29 points scored was the most for them all season long. I think it was the second highest yards per play they've had this season as well. And this was just a methodical scoring drive routinely. It was not a bunch of short fields they feasted on. It was not a bunch of 50-yard plays that you just have one coverage bust and the drive's over. It was just kind of, here's a little chunk here, here's a little chunk there.
They got 6 yards of play, KB.
I thought the second half really is where everything, if you just watch the opening 2 drives of the second half, that told you everything that you needed to know. If you remember, Taylor Heineke, Andy, what was the score at halftime? 13-7, am I saying this right?
13-7 at halftime, yes.
13-7, Falcons get the ball to start the third quarter, and on the first play, Taylor Heineke drops the snap.
Yeah.
Remember that? Just flat out drops it. I'm like, well, there you go. That's a great break right there. So now Atlanta's in 2nd and 14. And what do? Throw to Bijan Robinson in the flat like
for
they did
14
seemingly
yards.
Every single play. Robinson breaks a tackle. Boom, 14-yard gain. On the very next play, Robinson is bottled up in the backfield. It's going to be at least a 3 or 4 yard loss. Boom, breaks a tackle. And now he turns another 2nd and long into 2nd and 5. Atlanta scores a handful of plays later. And then on the next drive, it was 20-10. Again, still a 2-score game. You still feel like you're somewhat in it. You get Atlanta into a 3rd and 14. This is a backup quarterback in a 3rd and 14. And what does Arthur Smith and the Falcons do? They raise the white flag. They say it's a give up. It's 3rd and 14. We're not going to risk anything here. We're going to throw a screen to Jonnu Smith. And the screen, Heineke throws it behind the dude. So he doesn't even throw it in stride.
It was a terrible throw.
Throws it behind Jonnu
Smith.
And sure enough, there's Jonnu Smith in the open field, breaking a tackle, getting 15 yards. And right there at that point, I said, Rosie, break out the Barbie house. Let's get back to playing with Ken and Barbie. I mean that's literally where I was at that point of the game. I thought it was a horrendous tackling effort. And to me, the other thing too, Andy, is when you play a quarterback like that, who's inexperienced or hasn't been in the lineup a lot this year, however you want to describe Heineke, and you're playing an offense that has struggled to their point, you should have opportunities to play make. No turnovers. First time in 19 games the Colts haven't had a turnover. And the one sack was for 0 yards.
Is what, 3 or 4 hits? So it's not like well, you didn't get home, but you made him feel uncomfortable.
Right.
That's not the case. It's
Isaiah
quite literally
Franklin
the
dropped
opposite.
a pick, but outside of that, I don't remember many opportunities they had around the ball. And I do think we're on, Julian Blackmon injury watch.
Yeah,
I think
it's a
that
bad one. He played 99% of the snaps this season.
That is a very important guy
one
to watch with that shoulder injury moving forward.
By the way, and Elijah, you may need to listen in to what I'm going to ask KB here. What goes into building is it a Barbie castle, did you say, or a Barbie house?
Just a house.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about 35 items of plastic, kind of cheap plastic, to be honest with you. A lot of jamming it together, per se.
What do you think it was going to be? Good stuff? No, this is made in China, shipped over here, and you buy it for a bunch of money. What do you think this is?
Yeah, this is...
35, 45 minutes, that's not that bad. I mean,
no,
I feel like
it wasn't bad.
You got off pretty easy on Christmas.
It was
okay.
It was solid.
How much Notre Dame gear did you get? Over, under 2.5 items. That's where I was going to set it.
I don't know if I got a single Notre Dame item.
Was that because they were just ho-humming
I got
football?
Doritos
What's going
socks. My mother-in-law bought me boxers. How does that sound?
I hear Elijah laughing off camera.
Do you want context around it, or should I just stop there?
No, I think it's funny the way it is without the context. I think that makes it even better.
I want to know the context, because anytime you get underwear, we got to talk about it.
I believe it sounds a little better if she bought it and then gave it to her daughter to then wrap for me. It was Doritos boxers. I'm obsessed with Doritos.
I don't think I ever knew your obsession with Doritos.
Nacho cheese.
You're just
really?
the old,
but I can
the traditional
throw in a little
ones.
Cool Ranch.
I love Cool Ranch.
Cool Ranch greater than nacho cheese?
Yes, because nacho cheese gives me heartburn, so I can't eat it all that much.
Oh, jeez, Elijah.
Oh, God forbid.
You're too
how
young
old
for
are
that.
you? Yeah, how old are you? You sound like me over here.
It runs in the family. A lot of us have stomach problems with that sort of thing, so I just got unlucky.
On the 14-hour flight to Japan coming up for you, stay away from the Cool Ranch.
All right.
Oh, goodness. Oh, you're going to Japan. How about that?
Yes, I am. It's I'm going to call it an expensive field trip with my college. So we're there. We're gone for 2 to 3 weeks. I'll be there all of January.
Oh,
essentially.
so it's an educational thing.
In
Is
a
that
way,
what it is?
in a way, I've always been referring to it as cultural education, because we're not going into a classroom, but we're sightseeing and stuff and learning.
Don't break any rules over there, okay? Don't get in trouble.
Thank you to Alex for that. Better than your dad buying underwear for your wife. Well, Alex, I hope you're not speaking from experience there.
How many times has that happened?
Sounds a little awkward on that end there.
I bought. You guys will like this. I should have put this up on Twitter. And again, Rick Carlisle will join us coming up at 9 o'clock. I want to get to some Minshew sound coming up at the top of the 8 o'clock hour. I bought little gas, like these little Fisher Price figurines of the New York Giants, and guess what showed up in the mail? The Buffalo Bills.
Well,
so I mean, it's like a $20 gift. So like, do I return it and go through all of that? It's going to take like a month to send it.
I thought you were going to say Tyrod Taylor showed up, but Tommy DeVito did not.
Yeah, boy, that was a fun story, wasn't it? Everybody, Tommy Cutlet's benched, which is fantastic.
Are you more confident in Buffalo or Kansas City getting on a run?
Boy.
Now Buffalo. Easily could have lost to the Chargers.
I had to say Buffalo. Don't they? Should. I mean, you could say they should have lost to the Chargers. And Easton, is it Stick? Is that his name?
Easton
Stick. Is that the? The Chiefs are fundamentally broke on offense. Are they not? And listen, I know you're going to shake your head. I've known you long enough.
Is it possible we get Chiefs Bills round 1?
You don't believe it's possible. You don't believe in these curses. I don't think you do. But the Taylor Swift curse. Listen, don't roll your eyes, because it may have happened.
Wait, walk me through this.
Since Swift,
I don't.
Here it is. Since Swift and Kelsey started dating, the Chiefs are 3-4. Kelsey has 1 touchdown. They lost to the Raiders.
So the Swifties have this ability to control the outcome?
I believe that's the case.
This is not Kadarius Toney issues?
I don't believe it's any. You can't blame Kadarius Toney for that one. I mean, they are fundamentally a broken offensive team, and I cannot believe I'm saying that. I mean, they beat New England 27-17. They beat Vegas a month ago, and since then, they've been bad on offense going all the way back before Halloween. We were questioning their offense on before Halloween. What was wrong with the Kansas City Chiefs?
Now again, the Colts need the Chiefs' help coming up this weekend. They host Cincinnati. A lot of people have asked, and we'll obviously fill you in on this info throughout the week moves along. If the Colts finish 2-0, Andy, right now you got 4 teams at 8-7. Colts, Texans, Steelers, Bengals. Colts and Texans obviously can't both finish at whatever, 10-7, whatever it is, because they play each other in Week 18. If the Colts and the Bengals have the same record and are tied for the final playoff spot, right now the Colts are in because it's a jumbled 4-team tiebreaker. If it comes down to a 2-team tiebreaker,
Right.
they would not get in. That is the one scenario. A lot of people are like, do they control their own destiny? Well, they are likely to get in if they win the final 2. Cincinnati is at Kansas City, and Cincinnati has Cleveland is their other game. Now, again, Cleveland could be resting.
They could be, yeah.
So that is something just to monitor here over the final 2 weeks. And I know probably 95% of our audience says, Kevin, the Colts have enough to worry about with the Raiders and the Texans. I fully understand that, but just to keep you updated on the playoff standings, you do not want to be involved in a 1-team versus 1-team tiebreaker with Cincinnati. You want multiple teams involved because when multiple teams get involved, it goes to conference record, and with the Colts losing on Sunday, that's an NFC loss. So they continue to have one of the better AFC conference tiebreakers if that is needed. So that'll probably be the first of 37 times we go over that here over the next few days. I'll have that up in article form up on our website, 1075 The Fan as well. Rick Carlisle, in an hour, we'll continue the Colts conversation, give away a pair of Butler tickets to their game with UConn coming up a week from Friday. We'll do that in a bit as well. It's Wake Up Call. KB and Andy. Elijah filling in for Mark Dykton here on this Tuesday morning.
The Colts today have given up
On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, 8 o'clock hour, hanging on the drive. Hubler.com studio, KB and Andy. It is the Wake Up Call. No Mark Dykton today. Elijah Roberson hanging out with us. Elijah, I apologize. I called the Jaguars frauds. Is it your mom who likes the Jags? Wasn't that it? Or Trevor Lawrence? I forgot.
She is a big Jacksonville fan, but I'm going to completely agree with you on this.
They are frauds, aren't they?
I don't think Trevor Lawrence is the problem necessarily, but they are not. I don't even think they're going to make it. If they make it to the playoffs, they're not going to last at all.
So shoulder sprain, is that the update on Lawrence?
I believe that's what they said, yeah.
The dude just never misses a game, though. Like, you expect him to be questionable, and then Thursday or Friday, it's like, yeah, it's trending towards him playing. I'm not sure who you love right now. I mean, the Eagles, and we'll talk to Rick Carlisle coming up at the top of the hour, and usually a Tuesday at 8, we'll move him back to 9. They're in Houston tonight. You know, just as a general talking point here to kick things off this segment, KB, I don't know who you're supposed to love right now. I mean, I guess the Baltimore Ravens, I guess the Dolphins as well, but boy, the Chiefs look like frauds. Do you think that the Browns can keep this going in the postseason? Perhaps you say Buffalo, although they were in a 2-point game with the Chargers there. Jacksonville very much looks like a fraud. Houston, those injury issues. And then in the NFC, I mean, you have, the Eagles right now are going to end up being the 2 seed. Boy, the Eagles really had to labor to get by the Giants. Now, the Eagles should win their next 2 games and probably do finish 13-4, so they could still be the 1 seed. San Francisco, a disaster last night. The Cowboys had their chance to kind of get a big win on a big stage. They failed to do so as well. So the NFL right now is wide open. We'll do our GOATs of the week coming up in a half an hour. Is there someone you're dialed in on right now that you actually like? Because that's what I'm struggling with. I guess Baltimore, but boy, Lamar hasn't done in the postseason, man.
Right, but again, I do think it's a little bit of a different, Baltimore team with what they have from a wideout standpoint that is intriguing to me. The Jalen Waddle injury for Miami is a big deal.
That's a huge one. Yeah,
high ankle sprain for him. But Andy, if you look at it right now, 5-6 in the AFC, Cleveland and Buffalo. I mean, they very well could be favored, or just look at those matchups. Kansas City versus Buffalo, that's 3-6 right now. 4-5 is Jacksonville versus Cleveland. Would you take both the road teams?
I would. Yeah, I'm done with Jacksonville. I'm completely.
So Cleveland over Jacksonville, probably.
I'm done with them. Yeah,
probably everyone's there, but a lot of people would probably take Buffalo over Kansas City.
Sure.
Right now, so yeah, AFC has now I think shifted a little bit into like it's probably, and we'll see Baltimore, Miami coming up this Sunday. But that'll obviously decide the number 1 seed. Where do you fall on Gardner Minshew from Sunday? We've gone through the first hour. We haven't talked a whole lot Minshew related. Where do you fall on the play from him against the Falcons?
I mean, I don't know. It wasn't good, but he doesn't have any help out there. Like he needs help out there. We can agree with that, right? And when he doesn't have Pittman out there, it's a huge deal. And when they cannot run the football, I mean, they just could not run the football. Jonathan Taylor's out there with 2 yards per carry. So now it's an offensive line that's not having a good game. You can't run the football, and you have no wide receiver support whatsoever. So that's why I'm not clubbing Gardner Minshew over the head. He wasn't good, but I don't know what I'm supposed to expect from Gardner Minshew when every other facet of the offense was basically non-existent around him. Is that unfair? Should I be putting more on his shoulders? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I know it doesn't make for great radio, but I think I'd nod my head at pretty much everything that you just said there. If you're going to tell me before the start of the game, no Michael Pittman Jr., and your offensive line has a Cincinnati-type regression, I would say, it's not going to be good for Gardner.
You pack it away and bet Atlanta.
Of the 6 sacks, were some of them, maybe did Gardner hold on to it a hair too long? Sure, but again, this is kind of the Gardner we've seen. Pittsburgh was the outlier. Pittsburgh has been the outlier. Minshew's performance against Pittsburgh, which came on a day when your O-line was dominant.
Oh, you could run the football, yeah.
Of 4 quarters. That to me is the anomaly of the season. The Minshew we saw on Sunday is a little bit more of kind of what we are used to. And you brought up Taylor's rushing day. Again, Jonathan Taylor had 2 carries for 19 yards to start the game. After that, Andy, he had 24 yards on 16 carries the rest of the game. And I might be a little bit too, again, I put a lot of that onus on the offensive line and the inability to just create any sort of lanes. Go back to the Pittsburgh game. When Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson got going, the stat exiting that game was, they weren't touched until, 3 or 4 yards down the field. I mean, that's such a great number and a great indicator of your run game having success in your O-line, resetting the line of scrimmage. I never felt like Taylor had that. And I felt like at times, and maybe this is me paying more attention to it than I normally would, I just felt at times Taylor was uber protective of that football. And that's obviously can be looked at as a good thing, but I just thought maybe he wasn't as running as free, or he's so concentrating on, oh man, I can't cough it up. It's my first game back after the right thumb surgery. There's a bit of an unknown. Guys in practice aren't prying at it like the Falcons are going to pry at it. Again, I don't think that was the biggest issue in the run game, but I am interested to see him now in the next couple of weeks. Do we see just a little bit more kind of free running Taylor and not be as like uber conscious of, oh boy, this is a weird feeling for me. I haven't been in a game setting. Again, this is out of a practice-controlled environment, et cetera, et cetera.
And they relied on him heavily. I mean, Goodson got 1 carry and Sermon got 2.
Yeah.
So, it was Jonathan Taylor's day yesterday.
You brought up
Sunday.
a good point earlier, because I thought when Taylor was healthy kind of in the month of November, I would have liked to have seen him utilized a little bit more in the passing game. He had 1 target. I don't even remember the 1 target he had on Sunday.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm curious how much of that was anything due to the thumb, and it didn't look like there was a heavy wrap by any means or a cast or anything on that right thumb. If you looked at it, honestly, it kind of had a similar consistency, left glove versus right glove. Again, the right hand, his dominant hand, is where that surgery occurred. But I still think, especially on a day when you don't have Pittman, you've got to get the ball in space to Taylor. Screens, just little quick hitters.
Yeah, put him in the slot. Do something with him.
Make Atlanta tackle him in space like you couldn't tackle Bijan Robinson in space. I think that is something that I would like to see. Part of me does have a feeling, though, you could probably chalk a little bit of that to just, again, not total confidence in him with the passing game.
You mentioned Gardner Minshew. I think one of the stories coming from the game, I guess an impromptu pump-up speech after the game, refocusing everyone. Hey guys, you may not get too many chances at being a playoff team. What are we doing here? Many players after the game said that Gardner Minshew did that and had a good tone to it. Now here's Minshew in his post-game press conference, kind of talking about the missed opportunity on Sunday.
I think you start looking at opportunities like this, and you start counting wins, and you start doing schedule math, and you look around. It's like, well, they lost to Carolina. Well, we beat the Steelers. Well, you know what? Like, you got to go earn it right now. And if you take this lightly, you might not end up with another one. Everybody thinks you got all this time, you got all this, you're gonna have all these chances to make playoff runs, and it doesn't work like that. Like, we have to take advantage when we got them. And I'm excited to see how we respond and bring it next week.
All right, so there's Minshew, and then, of course, a very concise clip coming from Shane Steichen. Here's Steichen postgame. This wasn't Indianapolis Colts football.
It wasn't us. You know what I mean? You don't want to see it. You got to stop the bleeding. Again, starts with myself going forward, so we've got to get that corrected.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Minshew's comments. Obviously, you would like to see a team a little bit more desperate entering said game than exiting said game, like not having to need that result to kind of be recentered. I was hoping Cincinnati would kind of offer that for this football team. But there is, again, an element of me like this is a bit foreign to these guys. Like there is did anyone really think they'd be in this position? I think the disappointing aspect to it is, Andy, you are, in losing to Jake Browning and losing to Taylor Heineke, you're losing to other like-minded teams, if that makes sense to you.
You're not losing to the Ravens and Niners and Dolphins, right? Yeah.
Or just established quarterbacks.
Sure. Josh Allen.
Yeah, so that, I think, is what is disappointing. It's that the Colts, yes, they have overachieved from a win total standpoint to this point of the season. But now, 2 and 3 weeks, no more margin for error. If you are to lose one of these last two is to a rookie quarterback, it's a lot of teams that are in a very similar boat to you, maybe even in a different boat than you just with how steep of a drop-off that is from a Joe Burrow to a Jake Browning, or, in Atlanta's case yesterday or Sunday, that offensive output again, it was the big-time anomaly for them this season. They had not scored more than 29 points is what they scored on Sunday. That was a season high for them. Their biggest lead all year long was 13 points as well. But I guess to get back to Minshew, maybe he gets graded on a little bit of a curve. I thought he was blah, kind of typical Minshew. But to me, I put much more of the onus on massive defensive issues, especially in the tackling department and the offensive line. And those two, right or wrong, they get graded on a higher scale in my mind.
If he was blah, he was getting boxers from your in-laws that weren't Doritos, that were just boxers, that were just Hanes or Fruit of the Loom.
That's a tough moment. That's if that happens.
I'm sure it happened out there.
You got to go outside and smoke a cigarette.
Well, yes, you do.
Even if you don't
smoke a heater, well, you better have one. For me, listening to that sound,
I'm going to take a walk around the neighborhood after that.
For me, listening to that sound, I'm wondering how Colts fans feel, because you've overachieved this season, and this is going to be the dance, KB, if they don't make the postseason.
Right.
I want to be clear. If they make the playoffs, even if they go and they lay an egg immediately in the playoffs, it will be such an overachievement, and there is absolutely a line. Was it a line of demarcation between making the postseason and not making the postseason? But I'm interested in what fans. Well, let me go back. When it felt like to me Sunday afternoon and Sunday night, and then yesterday and this morning, one of the big pieces of conversation was that sound from Gardner Minshew. That Minshew had to be the one that brought everybody together after the game, and that the players talked about how Minshew brought everyone together and said, hey, you don't get many opportunities. You might not be back every year, whatever it may be. And all that is very true. And so I got thinking, how could a group of guys that have, even though it's a young team, we understand that, how could a bunch of guys take someone for granted? And then I got thinking, KB, of our analysis going into this game, of your analysis, of my analysis, of the thought in the fan base of the Colts. And that is, there was a sense of, I don't know if it's looking ahead. I don't know if it was arrogance. I don't know if it was, you're looking at this pathetic Atlanta team that is underachieved, that wants to fire their coach, that wants to get and will get a new quarterback. That just lost to Carolina. Yeah, they just lost to Carolina. The joke of this team was the joke of the NFL. And of course the Atlanta Falcons lost to them, because that's what Atlanta does. And it just, I think from coaching staff to obviously the players, all the way down to a radio fatty like me, I just feel like so many of us just overlook this game, and we're almost arrogant about this game. And obviously, go back and look at some of the scores around the NFL this weekend. You can't be that. And then the other thing, the last thing on this is, and boy, I know you were doing radio then, and so you can talk to this much better than I can. But, going back 2 years ago, the Colts had an opportunity sitting at 9-6 with Carson Wentz to make the postseason and fell on their face in that Vegas game and then in Jacksonville to not make the postseason. And while that team, definitely had, had more on it than this team, the Colts fan base, especially they've been a playoff team for the last month and a half, KB, that now the fans are conditioned to, we are going to make the playoffs. And if it happens here in the final 2 and 3 weeks of the season where you don't make the playoffs, going back to 2021 is going to become a conversation piece yet again. I saw some of that rear its ugly head over the weekend.
And again, to me, it'd be the opponents that will have seemingly knocked you out of the playoffs. Like, okay, let's play out this hypothetical. They lose to the Raiders on Sunday, and they're knocked out. Jake Browning, Taylor Heineke, and Aiden O'Connell.
Aiden O'Connell, who didn't have a completed pass in 3 quarters.
That's where I think the sting will be. We'll get a month or two out, and it'll be, boy, Shane Steichen year one.
Sure.
That will be the prevailing thought. But when you're in year 7 of a Chris Ballard era, and it is another missed playoff appearance because you have to undertake a rebuild after year 6, that's not what anyone expected here early on. Elijah, you said we had a caller from Cliff want to talk Jonathan Taylor. Is that correct?
He dropped.
He dropped?
We have Terry, though. Terry's there.
Terry, good Tuesday. I almost said Monday. Terry, good Tuesday morning to you. Hope you had a nice Christmas.
Good morning, Kevin. I wanted to agree with you about Jonathan Taylor. He looked extremely cautious, and he was double-arming the ball.
Yeah.
And that takes away from some of his shiftiness without question, I think. And another thing about him, and maybe I'm way off on this, they showed him on the bench after, I think, his second long run, had his helmet off, and that dude looked sick. Did you notice that? He looked awful. He looked like he was ill. But the real story of the game is Atlanta came to the fight ready to fight. And we went down there like we were on a field trip.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I miss field trips, by the way. I think that's well said.
Where do kids in the Indianapolis area go on field trips? What are the main couple?
I would say some of the museums downtown.
Okay.
I mean, hell, I'd like to take a field trip to Hinkle Fieldhouse if that's allowed.
I don't think that's where they're going to send kids.
What do you mean?
You think they're going
landmark.
to? I guess so.
If I have any say, I will chaperone that one in a heartbeat. If I can down
Are
the
you
road.
going to be the chaperone? You'll have time in the middle of the day after the show, right?
It sounds like a decent idea at the time. I might regret it by about 1 in the afternoon.
It might be. I don't know what to do with the Jonathan Taylor stuff just because there were 21 carries in the game and he got 18 of them.
Okay, how about this? 42 of 71 snaps. Is that a low number for him?
Okay.
42 of 71.
They obviously felt like something with either pass protection or catching the ball wasn't in the card. So that does mean something to all of this.
Again, Terry and I think kind of had a similar eyesight of, watching him. He is a very patient, effective kind of jump cut guy. You do see him kind of pick his spots. Maybe he's not the most straight line runner. So I did feel like there were moments where, yes, whether he was, gripping the ball with both hands, however you want to describe it, it just looked a little tentative and a little cautious. Again, I don't think that's the root of the run game issue. I think most of it is offensive line driven, but I do think that is something to point out. Now, I asked him last week, Andy, I go, are you worried about your wind at all? Because remember, when Zach Moss broke his arm, Zach Moss is like, guys, I know it's an upper body injury, but I'm not in football shape.
Right.
Like, I've got to get back into football shape. Now, Moss missed over a month. Taylor missed 3 weeks. And when I threw that question to Taylor, again, right thumb injury, not lower body, not ankle, not foot, not knee, he didn't want to go there. He's like, no, I'm good. Like, I feel good. I've been running. So I don't know if I can go there. I mean, for what it's worth, he wasn't listed on the injury report due to any illness. There is something that I want to point, and by the way, I the last point that Terry made there, and just the disappointment of the Colts going down there and treating it like a field trip. When you start up 7-0, I mean, that is the ideal start. The ideal start. What is Arthur Smith saying by deferring to the second half? I want my best unit on the field.
Right.
That's my defense. Your questionable unit is your offense. I want to win that early series, get a little bit of momentum for the, 30,000 fans that are in this building, and see if we can do something. And that didn't happen at all. I mean, you went right down the field. Will Mallory, a couple big plays. Taylor had obviously his best runs of the game on that opening drive, and yet they respond with the easy third down pickup to Scotty Miller, and there's Bijan Robinson there, and there's Kyle Pitts. And if you went up to refill the eggnog, it was 7-7.
Do you feel, now this is just me, I don't know. I don't know if I even feel this way, but I bet some people do. That was a scripted opening drive, and then eventually when the scripted drives go away, now you're playing real football, and when you were playing real football, we saw what happened to the Colts offense.
Yeah, I mean...
That would be the only thing I would say. I don't know if I believe that or not.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there is a script, and oftentimes it, lends into the second drive as well, but I go back to the play of the offensive line. I mean, Taylor's first 2 carries go for 19 yards in the rest of the day.
Okay,
Andy.
So how big of a deal is this? I mean, come on, we've been playing without Braden Smith here for a month.
Yeah, we have not said on very many Monday or Tuesdays after a game, we have not come in here, because Blake Freeland started, 7-8 games now? We haven't said
no, we haven't clubbed him over the head.
Looks like a day 3 rookie
he looked
starting
bad.
offensive
Yeah, he
tackle.
looked bad.
He looked like that on Sunday, and I thought Bernard Ryman had one of his poor games of the year, and I thought Atlanta did something very interesting. They put... And this dude, I swear he's the biggest dude that I have ever seen. I can't believe he's still playing in the NFL.
Calais Campbell?
They put big old Calais Campbell opposite Ryman. Campbell's more of really an interior guy, but what's kind of the MO on Ryman? And the same thing with Freeland. These are these basketball body types, kind of tight end background guys that are great athletes, dancing bears, but if you put power against them, they can be a little bit susceptible. And how many times did you just see that pocket collapse due to power? I thought there were so many times where it was just guys in Minshew's lap. And I'm talking Colts offensive linemen in his lap. Not necessarily speed rushers getting around the edge, just more of power guys there. So you are not built to sustain Jekyll and Hyde O-line, and especially without Michael Pittman, because you just do not have enough skill talent to create a few big plays and kind of offset some of that stuff. There is something I do want to get to a little bit later in that I thought you felt Tony Brown's loss. And I know that might sound like a shocking thing to say.
No, you wrote about it and you were right.
But there's a key play that happened in the game that Tony Brown is typically in this unit, and he was not in it, obviously, due to his suspension, and you had a big-time rookie moment by a defensive back that really, I thought, changed the complexion of how the first half ended into the second half as well. We did get a question here, Gus Bradley related. Again, in my opinion, Andy, it was the worst defensive effort of the season. I thought it was your worst tackling day of the season. I thought I saw a stat where Bijan Robinson forced like 11 missed tackles. I mean, just whiffs. And it wasn't just Robinson, to be fair. I mean, he was the biggest guy you had issues tackling. And I know these guys were drafted high. I mean, Pitts and Drake London and Bijan Robinson were all drafted high. Andy, there is no game evidence this season where Atlanta has the ability to do what they did.
Atlanta's offense has been terrible.
Offense. I think they were 26 or 27th in scoring,
terrible.
18 a game. They put up 29. If they wanted to, they could have been north of 30. They just kind of, threw up the white flag and say, yeah, we'll just kick some field goals here late in the game. So, yes, to me, Gus Bradley-wise and player-wise, I haven't seen the same Zaire Franklin that I saw earlier in the season. You just need a little bit more from that. That is a healthy unit at every level, really. And now it's a little banged up in the secondary with the Julian Blackmon injury. But you had no playmaking whatsoever. 0 takeaways and one sack.
If I ask you right now, if I made Minshew and I just threw the quarterback play up there, because, again, we've come in here and they've won in spite of their quarterback. Now, that wasn't the case against Pittsburgh. But if I threw Minshew, his play at quarterback, if I threw in the O-line and I threw in, I don't know if I would just say the defense or the front seven, the front, the defensive line, whatever.
I'd throw the whole defense in.
Okay, throw the whole defense in. What's the number one worry you have now going forward? And maybe if we even wanted to move Minshew aside, if I said defensive line, offensive line, what would it be?
I would say let me answer that question, but let me start here. For Sunday, the order I would put as biggest culprits, I'd put defense, because that was the healthy group.
Right.
Then I'd go O-line, then I'd go Minshew. Just for Sunday.
I agree with you.
Because, again, I grade those top two on tougher scales. Now, moving forward, the defense, I don't think this is the norm.
I agree.
For them. And, again, Aiden O'Connell doesn't complete a pass in the last three quarters.
I could see the defense be good on Sunday. That would not surprise me whatsoever if they had 4 or 5 sacks, got an interception, fumble recovery, hurried Aiden O'Connell. That would not surprise me whatsoever.
I would circle O-line.
Yeah, I just, we're right together.
To be expected, but that Raiders front with Max Crosby, they did some damage against Kansas City.
They're cocky, and Crosby's a dude.
And I think the only thing that kind of gives me a little bit of, Colts optimism for Sunday is I think the Raiders they have to be so emotionally drained from that effort. I mean, if you saw Antonio Pierce postgame,
sure.
that was their Super Bowl. They hadn't beaten Kansas City in all these years, and we're going to be violent, and we're going to, step on their throat, and all the football, things about, whatever, the warrior sort of mentality. Antonio Pierce said that. And now you get them on a short week where they have to travel multiple time zones. That should play to your advantage. Is the key word.
It's crazy. The last 2 weeks, the Raiders have scored 83 points. Again, let me say that again. The last 2 weeks, they've scored 83 points. The 2 weeks prior to that, they scored 20. If you remember, they lost to the Vikings 3-0, and then they lost to the Chiefs 31-17.
Their last 3 weeks have been shutout, They scored 63 in a game,
Yeah.
and they beat the Chiefs on the road.
And they beat the Chiefs on the road to where they didn't do anything offensively, but defensively they made Pat Mahomes look really bad. And that's the worry is they made Pat Mahomes look bad. You have Gardner Minshew. The Chiefs are struggling themselves without having, their best running back goes out and their wide receivers are not who they need to win a Super Bowl this year. And if you look at it from the Colts standpoint, they have had issues running the football at times. We saw that on Sunday, and I don't know if Michael Pittman's going to play on Sunday. Do you? It's a scary injury. I don't know if he's going to play. I would like to say, oh, yeah, he'll be out there, but I thought that last week after he was cleared by the independent neurologist.
Certainly an unknown. Again, did you feel the loss of Tony Brown? I will touch on that here coming up in a few. Rick Carlisle in 30 minutes. Go ahead and lead off the morning checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, quickly, let's hear Coach Steichen. It's obviously not a long clip. Michael Pittman did not play. Here's what Steichen said post-game about his wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, we adjusted, obviously, when we heard, and we went from there. But, again, we had full confidence in the guys that were out there and didn't get it done today.
Alec Pierce, all 71 offensive snaps. Andy for him. He has 3 catches in the game. DJ Montgomery, the other outside wideout, 61 offensive snaps. Catch. We pencil Michael Pittman in for what? 8 for 90?
I do. 8 for 90 and a touchdown
Something
almost.
like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much a given with Michael Pittman. Those two guys in over 130 snaps combined. 4 catches. And what'd you say, 32 yards?
Oh, I think that's what it is.
Like
I don't have that up yet. Yeah, I can find it. But I mean, you look at Granson and Mallory being your top 2 wide receivers. Yeah, Pierce had 30. Montgomery had 8. 38 yards, 4 catches. 38 yards in the loss.
The Colts and their playoff standings we'll dive into later in the week. You win 2, you should be good. You split, you're going to need worlds and worlds of help. Playoff article up on 1075thefan.com. Early 3-point favorite coming up New Year's Eve afternoon, 1 o'clock with the Raiders.
Pacers in action tonight. Our coverage beginning at 7:30. Pacers at Rockets. Pacers now 14-14. I thought that Orlando game, A, it's a bad matchup. B, I thought we kind of saw a little bit of a bounce back from Tyrese Halliburton. The other thing as well, if you take the Charlotte game out, there's several games here where the Pacers aren't scoring as much as we're used to. Again, if you're going to allow a bunch of points, you need to score them. 103 against Memphis, 110 the other night against Orlando, and then coming up tonight, the streaky, as you mentioned, Houston Rockets, 7:30 on the Fan. And I don't mind saying it, I'm worried about the Pacers. We'll talk with Carlisle at 9 o'clock. I don't know if that's a fair question. Are you worried? But I'm worried. You win 4 out of 5, you get things going. The NBA can be fickle. It's a long season, but a couple road games. The Knicks coming up. You get that home and home on a Monday, Wednesday with Milwaukee. 2 games against Boston coming up in early January. It's a scary schedule. If they keep playing the way they are, they're not a playoff team.
They are a slight underdog tonight in Houston. Again, 8 o'clock tip against the Rockets. It'll be in Chicago on Thursday, also at 8 o'clock, home to the Knicks. That's what the week looks like for the Pacers. Again, very quiet college basketball-wise for this week as teams getting back from Christmas. It'll be later this week before Indiana and Purdue get back on the floor. All right, yesterday, week 16 in the NFL. How about the Cleveland Browns? 36-22. Joe Flacco throws for 368. If you played Amari Cooper in fantasy, I'm sorry.
God bless you.
265.
Man.
And 2 scores there for Amari Cooper. And boy, that result on Saturday, Bengals losing to the Steelers, that was a huge result for the Colts. That is, if that would have been flipped, now I know Cincinnati got really outclassed in that game, but that's the one team the Colts do want to avoid from a standing standpoint here the rest of the season. You've got 4 teams at 8-7. That is Houston, that is Indy, and that is Cincy, and that is Pittsburgh. Basically, the reason why the Colts are the 8-7 team in the playoffs is largely due to their conference record and that they beat Houston earlier this year. Obviously, they'll see Houston in 2 weeks here, which will be a huge, huge game, but that is something to keep an eye on playoff standing-wise. Cleveland, Buffalo, and Indy, the last 3 wildcard spots in the AFC. All right, on the other side, again, did the Colts feel the loss of Tony Brown? We'll also hand out our GOATs of the week and Rick Carlisle in less than 30.
This sports update has been brought to you by...
Coverage starts at 9, kickoff at 1 on your home for Colts football. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, thanks for waking up with us, hanging out in the DriveHubler.com studios. Wake up call, KB and Andy. Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney. Halfway through, we got you until 10 o'clock today. Reminder coming up at the top of the 9 o'clock hour, Rick Carlisle will join us there in Houston tonight. That game time at 8 o'clock, 7:30 pregame right here on The Fan. You heard the promo as well. We'll have you covered on Sunday. Getting you ready for the Raiders visiting Lucas Oil, the Colts, a big one there as well. Something, KB, you wrote about on 1075thefan.com is something that's not going to get a lot of love because of just how inept at times, especially offensively, I should say especially tackling Bijan Robinson as well, was something that happened early in the game, and it happened on special teams, and it happened on the heels of a 3-game suspension to Tony Brown. Tell the people, because it was a big play in this game.
Yeah, and there's a reason, Andy, why in my story and now on the show today we have not mentioned it for the first, big chunk, because I don't think it is the biggest storyline exiting Sunday. As you said, to me, the offensive line, the play of the defense, the tackling issues, those deserve first mention. But late in the second quarter, it's a 7-7 football game, and the Falcons trot out Young Wei Koo. That is not a phonetic spelling of Young Wei, but Young Wei attempting a 49-yard field goal. Obviously, that is a long field goal. He has had some recent issues as well. So at this point, again, Andy, 7-7, long field goal attempt, no guarantee for a make. A miss here, and the Colts have a short field. And all of a sudden, it's late first half, and boy, the Colts could have a halftime lead. And on that play, Amir Speed goes off sides as Young Wei Koo misses the kick. I believe it was off the right upright, if I'm...
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. It was drifting. It was
So-
it was a drafty Mercedes.
He's got an odd pre-kick
Stadium.
routine, by the way. I'm like, is he going to toe bash this?
He does have an odd, yes. How he warms
he
up his
doesn't look
leg.
like an NFL kicker to
I
me
would agree.
From his, pre-stance or however you want to describe it. So Amir Speed goes offsides. Who is Amir Speed? He is a rookie. The Colts claimed him off waivers a couple months ago from the Patriots. He's a 6th-round pick out of Michigan State, transferred from Georgia there. Amir Speed is also the dude that ran into Isaiah McKenzie a few weeks ago in Cincinnati that caused a fumble there. Now I bring this up because the role that Amir Speed was in on that play is very similar to a role that Tony Brown has played for the Colts field goal block unit this season. Tony Brown is a veteran in the NFL, is pretty much exclusively a special teamer at this point in his NFL career. And so they're right on that play, Andy. You obviously have Tony Brown no longer with the team. You have a rookie and Amir Speed playing in a very similar role to what you had Tony Brown. And in a critical moment, Tony Brown's absence is felt by Amir Speed going offsides, giving Atlanta another chance. That then took 4th and 5 to 4th and inches. The Falcons go for it. They get that first down. And later in that drive, they then kick a field goal. So it's a 3-point penalty. What it also did was it ate up another few minutes off that clock. So now Atlanta extends their drive. It's a 14-play drive that ends in a field goal. Now they're up 10-7. The Colts get it back. They go 3 and out as Minshew is sacked once again on a 3rd down. And what does Atlanta do? They get a 47-yard field goal to end the first half, and it's 13-7, and now they are in control. They get the ball to start the third quarter, and we know how the rest of the game unfolds. So would you feel Tony Brown and Isaiah McKenzie's absence? We talked about that last week. On field, basically what we said is it thins your depth and maybe a little special teams with Tony Brown. Well, in that particular play on Sunday, it was a huge, huge turning point. Again, when you lose 29-10, I largely think that play probably doesn't decide it, but I'm a big believer in game flow, Andy, and how one play can kind of shift things. Go back to the Pittsburgh game, whether it was the Nick Cross pick of George Pickens, whether it was Gardner Minshew extending and finding Michael Pittman down the sidelines. Those moments in a game can change a huge complexion of it. I thought that was a critical moment, and it was feeling a little bit of the loss of Tony Brown there.
So I'm not feeling, and we'll get to our goats of the weekend here in a second, I'm not feeling that the special teams had a bad day on Sunday, but that individual decision or play was bad. But this is now...
Penalties to extend drives are awful.
They're bad.
Particularly offsides penalties.
Yes. I mean, it's now 3 games in a row that the special teams hadn't really been that good. It's worth mentioning just because this is a low margin for error team.
Right.
And the Colts giving away points and giving away time none of that's good, especially if you make the postseason, or especially giving the margin for error these next two games. You can't be giving points to the Raiders. The Chiefs found that out the hard way 2 nights ago.
And again, go back to the Cincinnati game, or again, look at the Amir Speed penalty from Sunday. Andy, you had penalty against Cincinnati of leverage, or what was it? Leverage, right?
Yeah.
On the field goal
it
attempt
was leverage, right?
Evan McPherson, and then you had an offsides penalty by Amir Speed. Blocks in this league are difficult. We do not see many teams block field goal attempts. NFL kickers are really good. Either they miss it or they don't. That's pretty much how it unfolds unless you have Myles Garrett.
The percentage of blocking a kick in the NFL has to be
low.
just massively low.
And now you have had a penalty in Cincinnati extended drive. I believe that one turned into an actual touchdown, if I'm not mistaken, for the Bengals. And then this one with the Falcons turned into an additional 3 points. And you bring up a great point. Again, you got outclassed in the second halves of both of those games, so I don't think they would have greatly changed things. But for a team that has a small margin for error right now, you cannot make those sorts of mistakes. Again, Rick Carlisle going to join us in about 15 minutes. Let's do our GOATs from the weekend.
Who is the GOAT?
I told you all that I was the greatest of all time.
Jordan, here's Michael at the foul line. A shot on Elo. Good! That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Or GOAT?
This guy sucks.
Of the week.
So I could give the cop-out, and to quote Rosie Bowen from Christmas Morning, she would hand the goat to Santa. Daddy, I can't believe he knew everything that I wanted.
Good for her.
Santa just on
so
top
nice.
of it. And, the longevity of Santa is darn impressive. So I do want to give a shout-out to Mr. Kringle here on December 26th, hopefully kicking his feet up, enjoying a spike a little rum chata in his morning coffee here.
You guys leave cookies out for Santa,
26th.
or what did the Bowens do? Some
did,
peanuts or what?
A little milk as well.
Okay.
Santa had look like a swig or two of the milk. Looked like the reindeer got into some stuff as well. So yes, good to see Santa make a stop at the Bowen.
All right,
household.
so where do you want to go? You want to go with the big goat of the week or the bad goat of the week?
Let's
here?
go with the big goat, and I'll let you lead off.
All right. I guess I'm going to go with the guy who's going to win the MVP now. I guess I'll go with Lamar Jackson. I don't know. I mean, Lamar's going to the Heisman. Did I say the Heisman? He's going to win he's won the Heisman.
He's already won that.
He's also already won the MVP. I guess I'll go with him. I was searching for who else I should go with this weekend, and I just couldn't nail down, one particular player, right? I mean, I guess Joe Flacco would have been the other one. I'll go Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that was a pretty goat-like performance.
Just those Browns, man.
I thought about
ridiculous.
going with Mr. Cooper, but, watching Christian McCaffrey last night, it's kind of funny that you went with Lamar Jackson. I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey as my GOAT from the weekend, and this is more of a season-long award. Again, Andy, we talked about this when the Jonathan Taylor saga was happening. Christian McCaffrey was really, really injured in Carolina his final 2 years. He has gone to San Francisco, and he has been extremely healthy, and he is unlike anything we have in the NFL. Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, I'm sure I'm forgetting other elite running backs. Nobody is like Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, I agree with you.
I'll never forget a few years ago at Grand Park when the Colts had the Panthers in town for joint practices at training camp. And you've been out there. You are very close to the action at Grand Park. And Christian McCaffrey is going through his individual drills, and, it's one-on-one work against Colts linebackers. And I'm sitting there watching, I'm thinking, and I still feel this way, I have never seen an NFL player move like him. And a lot of it is the short area quickness and just his ability to cut and the change of direction. He is absolutely incredible. I know San Francisco lost last night, so it's probably not maybe the reason to give it to him from this weekend. But I haven't watched a lot of San Francisco, so even watching them a little bit in primetime last night, I'm reminded by Christian McCaffrey. To me, he is the MVP. Although Lamar Jackson probably has a strong candidacy and probably will.
It has to be.
Win it.
It has to be a quarterback award, which I hate, by the way. I mean, Lamar should be up there. I think McCaffrey easily could win it. I mean, you have a couple defenders. Myles Garrett's been fantastic. Hell, T.J. Watt. I mean, I know they're not. They probably don't make the postseason, but good God, the Steelers. You feel like the wins above replacement without T.J. Watt would be substantial. You know what's funny as well? I had, I don't know if you remember Floyd Reese. He worked for the Tennessee Titans. He worked for Belichick.
Yeah.
He did a radio
Front
show.
office guy?
Yeah, he did a radio show in Nashville. He passed away a couple years ago, but I was able to kind of watch some football with him a couple different times and know people that did. And he said what you said. So you have the same eyes as an NFL evaluator.
It is
he said,
absurd
yeah,
watching it.
he saw him with, obviously when he was playing with Carolina and they were doing a scrimmage with the Tennessee Titans. And he's like, he's the best player that's on this field. And there's other great players that are on that field, Pro Bowl type level guys that are on that field. McCaffrey's fantastic.
And the hands to go with it, and his balance, the ability to break tackles.
He scores a
as
touchdown.
well.
He scores a touchdown every game,
Yeah,
basically.
it's all of that.
As well. Here's my lowercase goat of the week, and I'm not going to pick on the Jacksonville Jaguars anymore, even though they're pathetic and it's funny and everything else. I'm going to go with the general manager. I'm going to go with Brett Veach. He is the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I would imagine after the game, after the season, he and Pat Mahomes, if they don't make a run, are going to have a little conversation because you have an offense that is broken and an offense that has very few weapons. And I cannot believe, we've talked around here about Anthony Richardson, what he needs around him. Boy, that Kansas City skill group outside of Kelsey is not good. It's not even average NFL standards. And, their season right now is hanging in the balance. If Mahomes doesn't not make this magical run, which he's done a couple different times, Jerick McKinnon out 4 weeks there with being on IR. That's a big deal for them as well. Other running back injuries as well. I think it's them not having the weapons around Patrick Mahomes. How could you not have the weapons around Patrick Mahomes?
I'm going to be very selfish in my answer. I've told you before, Andy Sweeney, I absolutely stink at fantasy football. This year, I have somehow made the playoffs with 3 of my 4 teams.
Good for you.
All 3 of them have bowed out here after one game, and I am going to blame Cortland Sutton's injury for me losing one of those matchups. My lowercase goat of the weekend, and this is the most selfish fan thing. I feel like I'm yelling. I feel like I'm tweeting at players that get hurt here at these comments. Tell me I'm an idiot. Should fantasy football owners have a 1 injury reprieve each week? If a player gets hurt, are you allowed to sub in? You have to nominate your injured replacement before the game starts.
Okay.
Are you allowed to do that?
Okay, so it would have been a wide receiver for you. Well, the answer's no to this, but you would have had a wide receiver
I a
designated.
Loser right now?
Yeah, you are. I saw Jimmy Cook doing a little whining on the fantasy football front.
Now, I haven't taken it to social media.
Yeah, I know, which is good. You brought it to the radio.
Sticking to radio here, so hopefully no one will, edit this out and
pass this along to Cortland Sutton.
Use it against me. Is that a horrible idea? Injuries are part of football. Is what you're going to tell me?
I would say it's that. I would say it's a little bit of loser's cramp as well.
Haven't you been there before?
Listen, brother, we've all been there.
I'm sure
listen,
we all have.
George Pickens is out there catching 70-yard touchdowns. I did love every time a player did something. It was like watching Red Zone on Sunday. It's like if Aaron Jones trying to give his fantasy football owners. I'm like, guys, if you drafted Aaron Jones in the 2nd round, you're probably not in the playoffs, given that he hasn't done a damn thing this season.
I was 6 points down going to last night Monday Night Football. He had McCaffrey and I had Brock Purdy.
You were done anyway, right?
As much as I'd like to cry about Cortland Sutton's head injury.
You would have needed Purdy to throw 4 touchdowns, not 4 interceptions, and all those touchdowns not go to McCaffrey.
Rick Carlisle in 10 minutes. It's the wake-up call.
We've been telling you about the mission.
And, of course, the Colts and the Falcons. Fun begins at noon. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Rick Carlisle going to join us here, top of the hour. Some playoff stuff here in a second. We're running those commercials. The Mark Patrick. Did you have you heard these? The hip. You can get hypnotized. Have you heard these? Have you ever been hypnotized before?
I have. I'm just trying to bear with the mother-in-law boxer's gift. I don't know if I'm going to pursue that.
So you have been hypnotized. You have been hypnotized.
I have not.
I thought you had been before.
Am I missing out?
No, I've never been hypnotized as well. I've been in the company of hypnotists that have been able to hypnotize people for all sorts of things, and it can be a good thing. You quit smoking or whatever, lose some weight. I've also had people run around and act like a monkey.
And that's what the Swifties have done to the Chiefs.
That's what they've done to the Chiefs.
Quick little playoff rundown here. If the
give us
Colts
one.
win out, they should be in. Again, the big thing the Colts need to avoid, though, here down the stretch is you do not want to be in a head-to-head situation with Cincinnati. Right now, there's 4 teams at 8-7. That is Houston, that's Indy, that's Pittsburgh, and that's Cincy. The more teams you get involved, the better for the Colts, because that's going to involve conference record. But if it's just 2 teams and it's Indy and Cincy, Cincy would take that because they have the head-to-head win. Again, Cincinnati ends the year with Kansas City and Cleveland, but that is something to note. A 1-1 split, and you're going to need a whole lot of help. If they beat the Raiders, lose the Texans, those playoff odds, about 35%. If they lose to the Raiders and beat the Texans, that is at 46%. Basically, you would need Cincinnati and Pittsburgh both to lose one of their final 2 games, considering they are both at 8-7. And even the Raiders, they're lurking now, and they come to Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday. All right, Rick Carlisle, he joins us next.
Query and Company.
Nick Cross, the safety for the Colts.
Holidays. How are you?
Likewise. Happy holidays. I'm well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Big game tonight there in Houston. Was it a good Christmas? I know you guys, obviously, you're worried about your play on the floor and traveling and everything else, but did you at least get a little family and friend time over the last few days?
Yeah, Christmas was wonderful. It was a day to, really reflect on all the good things that life has to offer, family and et cetera, and really an interesting day weather-wise in Indy, pretty warm and stuff. So it was great, and we left around 5 p.m. Eastern time yesterday to come down to Houston. So now we're obviously here, and you guys have the right name for your show, the Wake Up Call. This is an accurate description of what you guys do.
Well, it's tough to wake up, Coach. On
Central
the
time zone for Coach.
Well, that's
right
a great point.
Yeah.
On the Tuesday after Christmas, it's like Christmas Day 2, and I'm in here staring at Kevin Bowen in the eyes. So that's what we're doing. Are you a glass half full or empty with your team right now and how they're playing? Let's start there.
Oh, I've learned to be a half full person. Really, I think you have to. I think you have to look at your team. You look at your the pieces you have to work with. You have to find the very best in what those guys are, what they can do, and then work at plugging them in to succeed. Individually, yes, but more importantly, you got to do what's best for the team. And so we got a great group of guys. I've said that really consistently all year long. And we're starting to get a little healthier, which is good. And we're going to remain positive.
This stretch, Coach, again, Rick Carlisle joining us here. It's Pacers and Rockets tonight, 8 o'clock here from a local standpoint, 7 Central Time. You guys have lost 6 of 7. What do you point to as some of the reasons for this recent rut?
Well, obviously the schedule has gotten much more difficult, and we knew it was going to, and it's really not getting any easier at all. I mean, Houston's playing well. Chicago is playing better basketball. New York had a big win yesterday, at home against Milwaukee, and then we're into the new year and we're playing Milwaukee twice, and then Atlanta and then Boston twice. So it's there's no bargains with the NBA schedule, and if you look ahead too much, it can get a little pretty daunting, I guess. And so, we gotta stay in the present, and we gotta continue to work on the things that we need to work on. And obviously, we've been working on defense more in a more concentrated way in the last week, or maybe a little longer than a week, and we're going to continue to do that.
When you guys look at that defensive end of the floor, I think there's maybe one of the higher fouling teams in the NBA through the first 25, 30 games so far. What do you kind of put into a reason why you guys are one of the higher fouling teams this season?
Yeah, it's true. I think size is an issue, and we just simply got to get better. With our team defense, with our positioning, we've got to show our hands more. A lot of our fouls happen with reach-ins, and we have to avoid those oh shit moments where you just are in the wrong place at the wrong time, and or just have a lapse of concentration. And we've shown in recent games that we can do that. We had the practice. I guess it was a week ago today.
Right.
I remember talking to you guys and talking about the fact we had our first live practice for in quite a while. That helped us. We played much better against Charlotte, and then back to back at Memphis. We didn't win the game, but defensively we've held 3 opponents under 120, which in the old days wouldn't be saying much, but when you're giving up an average of 126 or whatever it is mild progress, and so we're going to stay on it.
Rick Carlisle with us here on The Fan. He joins us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Coach, whether it be that defense that you're talking about or individuals or even as a team scoring the basketball, you've mentioned a lot of times consistency. We got to be more consistent. I know coaches mention that all the time. How do you accomplish that? How do you coach that? How do you guys become a more consistent basketball team?
Well, possession of the ball is a major part of any sport. I mean, there's no better example than football. Turnovers, field position, all that kind of stuff. And in basketball, it's the same. Rebounding is a huge part of the game. And ball security is a huge part of the game. And if you can control possession of the game, and you can conserve the amount, limit the amount of turnovers and the amount of second shots that you allow, it really goes a long way toward helping you win games. And so, we've been playing a very high-paced game and when you do that, you bring a certain amount of variance into the game. And the teams that can play fast and not turn it over are going to have an advantage because they're going to score more and they're going to put themselves less in harm's way with bad live turnovers that lead to undefendable transition, et cetera. So, we've got to continue to study, care for the ball. We have to continue to look at rebounding and the importance of rebounding. And so, those are major priorities, and doing it in the correct spirit. A team that has a real positive spirit is a team that's always glad to sacrifice for the group, for their teammates, et cetera. It sounds very cliched, but it is so true. And we have good guys. We make mistakes, because we're men, not machines. But we've got to work at always having the right spirit. And on nights when you don't play well enough, you've got to turn the page and look toward the next opportunity to get better.
That opportunity comes tonight. It will be 8 o'clock, Pacers and Rockets. It'll be the Bulls on Thursday, Knicks on Saturday. It's what the upcoming week looks like for Rick Carlisle and his bunch. Coach, I know Jarris Walker just spent some time down at the G League Showcase. He's got a little bit of action for you here over the last couple of weeks. Is he close at all to being a potential option for you from a rotation standpoint?
Everything's on the table. And I mean that you'll find that I'm very serious about that very, very soon. Jarris had he had two great games at the Showcase, and then the third game the team didn't play particularly well. He had a rough night, and so it's interesting you bring up his name. Lloyd Pearson, I talked to him on the plane last night about the importance of those kinds of moments where you can put together, two really strong games. And he put together two strong games, I think, of both of scoring and rebounding, and the team won. And then they got into the final game of the Showcase against a New York team that was deep, that had a lot of young veteran guys, young veteran NBA guys that were out of the mainstream NBA. And those guys were edgy, and they took it to us. And Jarris just had a game that was a quiet game, didn't have the kind of presence that he wanted to have, et cetera. And we talked to him about these moments where you build up, the anticipation, you build up the excitement. You've got to put that third game together. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go score a certain number of points or anything else, but there's nothing that says you can't be a highly impactful guy with a compete level that is, just obvious. There's nothing that says you can't go get 15 rebounds. And if you do those kinds of things, scoring always falls into place. So, it's an opportunity to, I guess it's a teaching opportunity, for a coaching staff. It's a learning opportunity for a player. And he's on the trip with us down here. He's back at, in the hometown of his alma mater, and I know he would love to play. And he earned some minutes before the stint in the G League Showcase. Anything's on the table for tonight. But had he put together that third consecutive impactful game, I mean, the whole world would be pounding the table. And, that's a bit of an opportunity loss for him, but we're only a third of the way through the NBA season. And, I expressed to him last night in this conversation that there are going to be more of these kinds of moments. And when they present themselves, you've got to take advantage.
I want to go back to something you said at the start of that answer, and I guess you double backed on it kind of there later. Everything is on the table. I think you said something to the effect of, and you'll find out very soon. Are you talking lineup changes? Is there anything more you can add to that specific part of it?
No, not right this moment. No, I'm not going to get it. Not going to get into all that stuff.
Check back and
I give you guys enough.
You do.
We'll know it. We'll know it when we see it, right,
Check back
Coach?
at 6:30 Eastern time tonight, maybe for that one.
Well, as we used to say when I was working TV, stay tuned.
There you go. What a tease from Rick Carlisle.
That's a professional tease. They teach us how to do that in radio and TV. Rick Carlisle with us, Payless Liquors Hotline. How is the health of Bruce Brown right now? How much can you tell us? I know questionable for tonight.
Yeah, Bruce is not going to play tonight. I will break that news right now, and we're going to hold him out at least tonight. He has a bone bruise issue in his knee that we need to get resolved. He's a guy that, unless you tell him you are not playing, he is going to play. And Josh Corbeil, our head trainer, ruled him out as a late scratch in the game against Orlando, which was the right thing. And we will hold him out again tonight. And try to get him completely 100% by the game in Chicago. And if he's not right, then we'll put it off another game. But he will not play, and so we'll miss him because he's been a good player for us.
And then I guess Andrew Nembhard, he got the start the other night against Orlando. What did you think of inserting him in the lineup and how he played? 17 points, a plus 14 the other night against Orlando.
Thought he was terrific. He's one of our very best perimeter defenders. He provides friction. Now, he had a couple quick fouls in that game, but he adjusted after that, and he was able to really play foul free until into the fourth quarter. So he took 2 fouls into the fourth, and he just he had an impactful game at both ends, and in that particular game it provided another playmaker on the floor to start the game, which is something that takes pressure off Tyrese because teams are throwing the kitchen sink at him, and they're making it very, very difficult.
Rick Carlisle again with us. 8 o'clock tonight. It is Pacers and Rockets. Coming up again, Bulls and Knicks the rest of this week. Coach, you get some time to spend with Abby over the holidays?
Sure did, yeah. Now, she's been home for quite a while, and that's been great. And she's had an amazing experience in her first semester at Virginia. She did very, very well in school. I'm not allowed to talk about her GPA after one semester. I was warned against that by my wife, and so I'm going to pass on that. But we're very proud of her, and in college these days, the Christmas break is a pretty long break, and so it's been a great opportunity for us to spend time with her.
Dad notes here. As someone that has a 3.5-year-old daughter, I'm jotting down notes here. Don't reveal GPA after first semester.
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought you were supposed to brag.
College here.
Anytime there was a good GPA,
Well,
I thought you were supposed to brag.
Says probably goes, right?
I am bragging. I just can't throw out numbers.
That's
fair.
fantastic.
Very fair. Smart advice there from Rick Carlisle. Again, tonight it'll be the Pacers and Rockets. Our coverage is going to begin at 7:30. It's an 8 o'clock Eastern tip. Coach, I know it's early in Houston. Appreciate the time. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we'll talk to you in the new year.
Always a pleasure. Take care, guys.
Rick Carlisle right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. A lot there. Elijah, great work on the dump button early from Rick Carlisle. That's a couple dumpers he's had with us this year, right?
I've only been here for this one, and this is the first time I used the dump button.
That was a nice left-hand movement there from Elijah to get on that. What do you make? What do you make of the everything's on the table? You could find out very soon what that is.
I like it. I mean, that is a tease that you would imagine. Okay, let's go back because Carlisle alluded to there were going to be some lineup changes. And then there weren't any lineup changes against Charlotte, okay?
A week ago today.
A week ago today. And then he slept on it. They had a few days. He had a few days to think about it. And there was no change. And then the Memphis game happens, and they lose, and that's Ja's big game and everything else, and there was nothing there. And it was Buddy, it was Halliburton, Turner, Brown, Toppin, and everything else. And then Brown with the knee injury, notable, he's not going to play tonight. That sounds like, I don't know, maybe that's going to be maybe a few days here. And so you put Nembhard in the starting lineup. That makes all the sense. But it's an injury, and Nembhard played well, so it's not like you're bringing Bruce Brown off the bench and he played 11 minutes. So we don't really I don't know if Nembhard starts tonight, which I would imagine he probably would, then I don't see where you would have any other change than that starting lineup that we saw with Orlando. To me, it's going to be, does someone earn minutes? Does he try different combinations? This is the second time in a week we've heard Carlisle hint at there's going to be a change, and I guess the first time there really wasn't a change. What happens tonight, to me, it sounds like he's going to do something different.
And again, when I followed up, I mean, he alluded to something is going to happen. Obviously, he wouldn't share what. Now, I will say there was an ounce of me, Andy, for a split second, just based off his wording, and I could be reading too much into it. Based off his wording, I thought, could we see a trade? Again, it was just an ounce that crept into my mind, and I'm not usually a big, send me every possible potential trade. Send me the ESPN trade machine and let me do that for 5 hours. I'm not that guy, so I don't think, nonstop about it, but when he said it, that was initial thought that I had. Now, I do think it's more lineup-centric than anything, and obviously, like you said, Andrew Nembhard really, maybe the lone bright spot from Saturday night against the Magic. I do think him being back is important. The other thing that I thought he said with us that I found interesting, and he didn't, hit on it too much, but he did mention, I asked him a question about fouling, and they're one of the higher foul teams in the NBA, and he mentioned size.
Right.
I would say that's something to do with lack of Pacers size, more size for the opponent. When you think about the starting lineup, what's Halliburton? 6'5"? Bruce Brown 6'4", Buddy Hield 6'3", 6'4"?
I mean, you're about right. Miles Turner, 6'11".
Right. I'm focusing on those three. I would venture to guess in today's NBA, I could be wrong on this, but I would say there's probably not too many teams that start three guys 6'5" or less. That's just how the NBA has kind of evolved.
I would agree with you.
Everybody's got kind of the 6'7", 6'8" wing. Hell, there's probably teams that start four guys over 6'7". So, now, Nembhard doesn't necessarily solve that. It's not like Nembhard is this, and it's not like Benedict Mather in the starting lineup would all of a sudden change your size or your height there. But that is also something that I think should be noted. So Elijah will certainly podcast that. I think that was another enlightening listen from Rick Carlisle.
We got some news about Bruce Brown not playing tonight.
Yeah,
I just, here's where I am with this team, and I feel this when we talk with Carlisle, that we've been clear that we haven't beat this team over the head too much. And they haven't been good the last couple weeks. And I feel like with the Pacers, KB, there's a lot of gray area. Like the Colts erased that by being in playoff contention and beating some of the teams that they did. The NBA, it's such a long 82-game schedule that, we've looked at this team as a really good team, as one of the talks of the NBA, and now they're not. And we're saying that, and it's not like it is in the NFL where it's like, well, you only have 3 more opportunities or 4 more opportunities or 2 more weeks of the season. There is so long of a season to go here that it's not like it is in football where every game means so much that the emergency signals go out. Does that make sense what I'm saying? That they can go out, win 4 out of 5, win 5 out of 6, win 5 in a row, whatever it may be, and they're right back to where we are in all the consternation and all the unhappiness and everything. It's like silly. It's like, well, why did you do that? You're not even 30 games into an NBA season. You got a lot of time. Why are you sounding the alarm in December when you have all these games? But also, on the other hand, again, this is the nuanced discussion. They're not playing very good basketball right now, so much so that Rick Carlisle, the last week, has told us and has said very publicly, alluding to changes, right? Whether it be lineup or I guess whatever else it may be, shuffling the lineup, shuffling the starting lineups. I mean, he even alluded to, are we going to have a different style of play? Do we need to have a different style of play if we can't play defense and we're fouling at a high level and everything else? And then it's odd, even talking with Carlisle, we get the nuanced discussion of, he says, basically said you're going to find out soon the changes that we're going to make. It's the second time in the last week that he's done it. But when he talks about his team, we had him on for 15 minutes. Don't you feel like the other 13 minutes are him being glass half full guy?
Yeah, agreed.
And so there's that negative of, we're going to do something here. It's going to be a big move. And we've heard some of that. And then we've also heard, well, I'm a glass half full guy, and these are great guys. And we've done a little bit better the last couple games, allowing under 120 points in those respective games against Memphis and against Orlando. And so I'm trying to find out what the correct lane is for this Pacer team. And I'm very confused because it is a nuanced discussion. There is a lot of time. They've done good things, but they're also right now an 8 seed if the playoffs were to start. And you start looking at some of the teams ahead of them. I mean, there's 3 or 4 teams that they're not going to catch.
I think a couple things. First off, what does a coach say publicly? What does he say behind the scenes? 2 different things. I do think Rick Carlisle toes a little bit more of the candid nature, which we greatly appreciate with him on Tuesdays. But, just think about Shane Steichen. He doesn't have to talk about Deion Jackson or Shaq Leonard or, Daryl Baker Jr. publicly, but then the actions speak enough. It's a bench, and it's a cut. Amir Speed, talked about it earlier in the show. His offsides penalty, to me, that is a borderline cuttable play for a guy that has nothing on his NFL resume. At the very least, it's a you're inactive for next week type play. Do we see that? Again, Shane's not going to say anything publicly about it.
Right.
So is Rick Carlisle talking with Lloyd Pierce and Jenny Buchek and Mike Winder behind the scenes and saying, all right, I can be glass half full publicly, but the lineup changes are going to be the actions.
Oh, there's a bad cop attached to it.
Those are the actions that obviously speak to it. Now, he points out you're a third of the way through the season. What I think is so frustrating about the Pacers so far is they have all these great wins, so there's potential there. And at the start of the year, Andy, I was probably a little bit more on the high end. I said 5 or 6 seed, 45 wins. Vegas was more of hover around 40, probably a play-in team. Well, right now, that's what they're at. They're a 500 basketball team. That's 41 wins, and they're the 8 seed, like you just said. So they're kind of where they're at. The issue is the recent trend is negative, and now the schedule takes it up a notch here in January. I just don't know. So much of it for me is rooted in personnel, the big wing. There's not the big wing, the defensive-minded guy on this basketball team. So I don't know where the ready-made fix is. Now, someone could point out, hey, Kevin, they were 7-5 with the previous starting lineup. Since the lineup changed, they're 7-9. Should they go back to the original lineup? Now, obviously, tonight you've got Bruce Brown out, so
which would be taking
totally
Buddy Hield and bringing him off the bench and putting Matherin back into that starting lineup.
And
right.
I don't know if that's the cure-all. Now, 7-5 to 7-9. I mean, that's I guess a notable difference when you look at it from a record standpoint.
Does he think Matherin's earned it? I just
right,
I don't feel like he probably feels that way.
I'm a huge Matherin guy, and I'm also a huge guy of you need to see the youth continue to develop. Play Nembhard. Play Matherin. I asked about Jarris Walker for a reason. Is he close? Because I think you can't lose sight of you're not in this win now. You are not the LA Clippers of this season where all the chips are in the middle of the table. Screw the draft pick. There is a fine balance you're walking right now with the Pacers in, I guess you'd call it year 3 of the rebuild. You should and need to do some winning. But you also need to continue to develop the youth and make sure that the pieces around Halliburton internally are there for you moving forward.
I think here's what it did. You mentioned you being pretty positive about this team going into the season. Like, hey, they could be a 5 seed, a conversation like that. What adjusted over-under number do you have them at? I can't remember. Is it 45.5, KB? Is it 46.5? Don't you have them at an adjusted over-under number?
At least 45 wins.
That's what I thought.
I'm sweating.
Well, I mean, you should be. I guess the thing would be with that, we had some positivity, and then early on, they gave credence to that positivity, right? I mean, they did.
Oh,
they were the talk of the NBA,
right.
Up until
even
that Lakers
some
game.
Of the bad losses.
100%. Even in the midst of bad losses, nationally and even locally, we were paying attention to the good wins. And I'll go back to something you said, and it's exactly what I wrote down if we talked about the Pacers today, was remember going back at the beginning of the season, we were being a little positive. The overall thought from Pacer people that we had on, I don't mean Carlisle, but, insiders, if you will, that we had on, and a lot of the national scuttle was just be a playoff team, right? And it feels like now that's what they've settled into. And so for a lot of people, I think they look at the Pacers and say, well, I mean, I thought they'd be a playoff team, and, that's what they're trending to be, is about a 500 playoff team, and they'll make the playoffs, and that's a good start on a year. Making the playoffs when you are rebuilding and when this is the first year of contention, it means I'm not going to bash them over the head, but given that they've showed us that they can be more than that, it's made it to where I kind of want to bash them over the head. It's a very difficult spot I find us in with this basketball team.
Eddie Garrison points this out to me, again, producer of the Pacers Radio Network. 16 of the first 23 games to open up the new year are against playoff teams. So we talk about the schedule, stiffening a little bit. And then Tucker Barnhart and I are trading a few texts. Diehard Pacer fan, of course.
Boy, is that a name drop?
Well,
that's a nice name drop. Tucker Barnhart.
Big-time Pacer fan, a man that's been in professional sports at a very high level.
We had him on a Thursday a month ago.
For a decade. A little bit different than my resume, to say the least here. And he points out, and this kind of gets into the Carlisle change topic, he says, I've been a part of a lot of those conversations. Usually they happen day of game, day of practice. It's 8:28 Central Time right now. I think if he is going to make substantial lineup changes, he probably wants to tell those guys first before revealing it to us here on the radio. Now, he points out,
fair point.
What about Jarris Walker for Obi Toppin in the starting lineup?
What about just playing Jarris Walker? He lit up when you ask about him.
Yeah, I'm going to go there first.
Okay.
Again, big picture, what Tucker's pointing out, more of Walker, less of Toppin. Toppin's in a contract year. He's not a guaranteed piece to be with you moving forward. Jarris Walker, of course, is under team control. And defensively, I don't see it from Toppin. Great athlete, but I don't see it on that end of the floor like Jarris is supposed to give you a little bit. So, again, I'm probably baby steps with Jarris Walker. Let's get him into the rotation first before maybe outright starting lineup. But I think it's a fair point to bring up here on this Tuesday night. Again, Pacers-Rockets tonight. That is 8 o'clock. Let's still give away those Butler pair of tickets to the UConn game a week from Friday. Let's do that at some point here to close it out. Do we have a good question we should talk about off air?
Oh, we should definitely talk about it off air. Should we make Elijah come up with the Butler basketball question?
Elijah, come up with a Butler basketball question here.
Just throw it on him. By the way, I do love that usually we have Mark Dykton, who always plays the Packers suck, and Elijah wearing his Packers jersey
I
today.
did that on
like
purpose.
that.
I did that on purpose. I got it for Christmas. I love it. I mean, the Packers are probably not going to make the playoffs, let's face it. But just to mess with Mark a little bit, I decided to wear it while I was doing his shift today. So
he'll have to get the stink off his chair.
Are the Bears lurking in the playoff picture or no?
Oh, they won? They have, 6 wins? No, they're not lurking. They're just ruining their draft position, like the Jets did.
Time for a morning checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
One last Pacers thought. Neesmith, is that a little longer? Is that a little bit more size? I know he's not 6'8", 6'9", but I don't know. Maybe I'm putting too much into that Rick answer with this earlier, but I'm trying to provide a little bit of what could be the realistic thing.
Listen, Carlisle, you better make a change that we all understand, okay? After all of this for the last week, let's start 29-10. Not good for the Colts. Losers in Atlanta on Sunday. The Colts still a 7 seed, 8-7, still a ton to play for, but not good in Atlanta. Here's Shane Steichen.
I don't know. We got to look at ourselves hard in the mirror, obviously, after a loss like that, starting with myself. And get those things corrected. You have a big win the week prior, and then you go do that. What we did today, we can't have it. And obviously we got 2 guaranteed left to us, and we got to get it cleaned up in a hurry, and they're at home. So I know we will get those things cleaned up. I have full confidence in the guys in there that we'll get it cleaned up for the last 2.
Andy, you more disappointed in the defensive effort or the offensive line effort from Sunday?
Boy. You know what? I'm going to go. I hate copying out. I'm going to go with the defense. I'm going with the defense.
Well, why is that copying out?
Oh, I guess it's not copying out. I guess I'm going defense simply because you got like 4 or 5 guys that are good pass rushers, and none of them did anything. You dropped what could have been a pick 6 as well. I don't know. You made a bad offense, even though they have some nice skill guys. A bad offense and a backup quarterback and an embattled coach and everything else. By the way, we haven't even talked about it. We're 2.5 hours in, and I should have. I mean, the reason Atlanta won, Arthur Smith, he shaved the mustache.
I did see
We
that.
didn't even talk about it.
No longer adult film star Arthur Smith. He's Falcons head coach again.
Exactly. If I would have known Arthur Smith was going to shave the mustache and Michael Pittman Jr. wasn't going to play,
you would have had Falcons 29-10
I would have went
probably.
Atlanta 30-10. To win the game. So, which way would you go? I would go with that defense just because they were healthy.
I mean, again, they're healthy. That's not Atlanta's strength, their offense. You've seen the Colts the Colts O-line have some issues here in the Cincinnati game just 2 weeks ago while they played much better against Pittsburgh. But yeah, I would go defense. Healthy at every level, and there's multiple things. You didn't play make, and you whiffed routinely on tackles.
You can't do both.
After tackles. Season high in points for the Falcons. Second highest yards per play of the season. Colts Raiders, week 17. They need a win. You are favored by 3 as the Raiders got a big win in KC yesterday. It will be a short week and a multiple time zone trip for the fired up Antonio Pierce and Aiden O'Connell. Again, tonight it is in Houston. Last I saw, Andy, 2.5-point favorite. Does that sound right for the Rockets?
Yes.
They are the streaky Houston Rockets. This is how their season has unfolded so far. Lost their first 3, won their next 6. Lost 3, won 2. Lost 3, won 5. Lost 3, and now they've won 2. They're athletic. They're young. I forgot they had Fred VanVleet. Wear a cup with Dylan Brooks.
Well, I was going to say Dylan Brooks. We should have. Oh, man, we dropped the ball. I mean, Carlisle wouldn't have said anything, but he does have to tell the guys before the game, hey, Dylan Brooks is going to do something shady in this game. Like, you know it.
Sengun at center is very good, even though probably no one in this market knows much about him. Aaron Holiday, talk about a former Pacer throwback. He gets in off the bench, and they're young guys. Remember, Amen Thompson, Cam Whitmore.
Oh, yeah.
Jake and I certainly discussed some of that around the NBA draft. Those two have barely really played for him.
You and Jake had a lot of Cam Whitmore conversation back in the day?
Well, remember,
sure you did.
We had Chad Buchanan on the day after the draft, and he said that the Pacers were, I forget the exact word he used, but let's go with feverishly trying to trade back.
Smitten.
Up into round 1 to take the falling Cam Whitmore, which he has really not done much here for the Rockets early on.
3.5 is your spread right now. I think the most shocking thing, again, the over-under 237.5. Looking at it right now on ESPN. Oof.
Week 16 wrapped up in the NFL. Again, we'll continue to monitor the playoff picture. Right now in the AFC, you've got two teams that have clinched. That would be the Baltimore Ravens. That would be the Miami Dolphins. In the NFC, you've got Lions, 49ers, Cowboys, and Eagles. So still over half of the playoff field that needs to be solved here in the final 2 weeks. And plenty of seeding. Has anybody clinched a seed? I don't think anyone has clinched a seed yet.
I don't believe that's the case, no.
And we get Ravens-Dolphins coming up this weekend.
Ravens-Dolphins will be a very good one. And let's say Lamar may win the MVP, which would be good for him.
I still think
Second
Christian McCaffrey deserves a little bit. And who knows? I mean, if Tyreek Hill goes off this week, I don't know. Maybe that's something that could factor into it as well. All right, we'll continue the Colts conversation and give away tickets to Butler, UConn, a pair of them a week from Friday.
Guys, solve your ED today with an
Into the Colts and Falcons, all the items that we've discussed here over the last several hours. You know, KB, just to wrap up, I know we said a lot about the Pacers there. We always appreciate Coach Carlisle joining us, especially game days like today. Again, 7:30 tonight, our pregame coverage here on The Fan. I was watching, there was obviously a lot of football, and there was still the basketball going on the 5 games going on Christmas Day. And one of the post-game shows, they were having the conversation. It was Woj was having the conversation about the 76ers. The Sixers, obviously want to extend Joel Embiid, and then on top of it, they have Tyrese Maxey, who is pretty financially friendly right now, being, just a couple years in the league, and so eventually he'll get his money. But one of the things he was mentioning, whether it be a trade or in free agency, they can, whether it be a trade in season or free agent after the season, they're essentially going to have that slot open for a max deal player. And the guys that he was mentioning were who? The Raptors, Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby. And the reason it's interesting, those are the guys that we've mentioned here.
Right.
And Woj was making the point with the Sixers, they need a big wing that can go guard and that can go do all these things. And I'm like, first, every team needs that, or just about every team needs that. But we've talked about that so much with the Pacers, and he mentioned Siakam and OG by name as 2 guys just to kind of watch should they go all in midseason. And I find that interesting, given that Carlisle's comments and where the Pacers are. Those are 2 guys for the last 3 weeks that we've talked a ton about.
Yeah, we were just talking about it a little bit more in the break. Again, do you start Nesmith, move Top into the bench, get Jarris Walker into the rotation? That's kind of something that I think I like in helping you out short-term and a little bit of long-term view as well. And, Andy, it's probably time we start to pick up the Buddy Hield conversation again. I mean, you're a month and a half away from the deadline. What does that look like with him? And obviously the schedule, again, totally stiffens up here come January. All right, before we get back in the Colts conversation, we are going to give away those Butler tickets. This is to the UConn game a week from Friday. Elijah, let's take the caller that can provide the first answer. We'll do this off air. Since 2000, how many NCAA tournament victories for the Butler men's basketball program? Since 2000. Andy Sweeney, we looked up this answer.
We did.
Your first thought when you heard the number?
I thought it was a little high. But again, you got to think, 2010 and 2011, they won a ton of games in the tournament. But still, that's only 5 each? So that leaves you at 10.
If you take those 2 years out, do they have more NCAA tournament wins than IU over that span?
Now you're doing sports radio.
No, I asked that in all seriousness.
Well,
do they?
I need to look it up.
IU
I would
obviously
imagine
went
they
to the
would.
title game in 2002.
Right.
But that's their only Elite Eight appearance, right?
It is. But don't get mad.
So
Indiana fans will start coming at you. They'll get angry.
Since 2000, how many NCAA tournament victories for Butler? That is the men's basketball program. Elijah's taking that off air right now. Jonathan Taylor in his return, Andy. First 2 carries, 19 yards. The rest of the game, 24 yards on 16 carries. We had the caller earlier, and I kind of brought it up. I think the root of the run game issues for Sunday was an inability to establish a line of scrimmage, and there's a domino effect with this. It's no respect for Gardner Minshew. It's no respect for a passing group, sans Michael Pittman. So there are other reasons. How much were you putting blame on Jonathan Taylor in his return for the lack of rushing effort come Sunday?
So I don't put too much on Jonathan Taylor. I don't. I think the Colts on Sunday were probably about the easiest team to defend as there could be. Am I wrong there? Not having Pittman, and not having and the offensive line being dominated. So we know Atlanta already was good against the run, one of the better teams in the NFL. We talked about how a lot of their stats, they had a top 10 defense, and there's no doubt their offense has put them in bad position this year. So you look at a good defense already. You look at, potentially maybe he was favoring that right hand. You throw that in, and I think you have to throw in as well, not only the offensive line, but that the Colts, Coach Venturi's talked a lot about this on the different Colts programs here on the air. That is, when teams go to that bear defense, when they say, we're going to stop that run, the Colts, for the most part, they kind of succumb to that, do they not?
Right.
So nothing helped Minshew out. The question I have, and it's still, if this team makes a postseason, and even if they don't, you still have these 2 games to where it can change a narrative. In the end, boy, there haven't been too many high points for Jonathan Taylor. Is it a lost season this year? Well, totally. I just you look at a game
not a loss
like,
from the bank account.
Well,
but
I guess that's my point.
Yeah, it's been a disappointing season, health wise, and then I would just say kind of sheer production.
He hasn't hit 100 yards
when he's been on the field.
Yeah, I can understand. Well, 100 yards doesn't have to be the line anymore. He had a nice game against Tampa. He had the 91 yards to 2 touchdowns. If you go back to that Saints game, 7.9 per carry. I only feel like I guess there's a point of we could get to the end of the year and there's only 2 or 3 games where we feel like we saw the Jonathan Taylor that we have seen, and I don't know how much that worries me going forward, coming off a brand new spanking 3-year deal. And it's 2.4 yards per carry yesterday. That's what it is.
With Anthony Richardson, I do think that's important context to talk about moving forward. We've mentioned the Zach Moss, yards with Richardson versus with Minshew at starting quarterback. I do think that factors
they're
in.
Easy to defend
as well.
And that's the biggest problem they have.
And again, especially if you were Michael Pittman Jr.'s agent, you sat there on Christmas Eve afternoon and you, outside of your client being injured, you sat there smiling, watching the Colts offense try to move the ball vertically. Alec Pierce and DJ Montgomery, 132 combined offensive snaps for them, 4 catches for 38 yards. I thought I saw a note the Colts had 5 drops on Sunday. I know you can get a little gray area with that figure, but there were some very catchable balls.
There was 2 or 3 that were just right for first downs. And, you bring up the Alec Pierce one, everyone automatically, I'm not picking on Alec Pierce, but that's a play that you have to make, especially when your options are limited and especially when the targets are rather limited for Alec Pierce as well. David Mulugeta from Athletes First, that is the agent for Michael Pittman.
Oh, he's one of the bigger ones.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Out there. Colleen, that was our winner, Elijah? Yes. My mother's name is Colleen. Different Colleen.
It wasn't her, was it?
I'm assuming. I don't think your mom's last name is this lady's last name because they don't match at all.
I thought you were just going to say it. I appreciate
Correct.
that. Well, she's going to go then. I watch UConn this weekend. Colleen, they barely beat Patino.
Congrats, Andy. The number of Butler NCAA tournament wins since 2000?
That number is 22. 22. That's a large number. Butler right now, from Joe Lunardi, is in the first 4 out. I don't know how much that matters on December the 26th, but here we are.
I have an amendment to my lowercase goat from the weekend I'd like to do before we close it out, all right? Can
Good
we do
with
that?
me? Yeah.
We'll do that
do whatever
next.
you want.
One final time here. Wake up call, KB and Andy.
Every 40 seconds, a child is
Coverage Sunday morning at 9 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I am a lineman for the county.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Searching in the sun.
Yeah, hopefully everybody had a good holiday weekend. If that continued into today, that's great stuff as well. New Year around the corner. I imagine everyone on this show is going to be at home not doing a damn thing on New Year's Eve. I'm looking at Kevin Bowen. I don't think he's going anywhere with the kids, and neither am I. Now, before the break...
Miracle if I see midnight.
Well, yeah. You wanted to amend one of your goats of the week, so go ahead. The floor is yours. I'm forgetting who you even picked to be your goat of the week.
I gave an awful lowercase goat of the week. I was selfish. I said, well, if your fantasy football team has an injury, you should be allowed to replace that player. I mean, just so soft of me, so selfish of me.
So who called you out?
I've got a new one from an entertainment value, all right?
Okay,
and this makes me think of Butler from Saturday. I watched a lot of Butler Providence on Saturday,
did I.
Okay? End of the game, Butler's what? They're up 3, Andy.
Yep.
Providence hits a 3.
Yep.
2 seconds to go.
Yep.
Overtime. Providence pulls away.
Yep.
They win. I want a college basketball rule.
Okay.
And that Thad Matta would not sign off on this after what happened at the end of the game on Saturday. No team is allowed to foul up 3.
Interesting.
Entertainment value is my only reason for this. There's no logical basketball reasoning behind
you're
this.
Spot on. It slows the game down into mush.
It slows it, and it makes for the most boring final 15 to 10 seconds. I want every three-point shot to be attempted there late. I want a technical foul called if you are up 3 and you foul.
I thought you were going to say something about they would be able to advance the ball to midcourt.
But you can still foul right on the catch.
Yeah, but the only reason I thought you were going to say that is, infamously, our good friend of the show, Mike DeCourcy, hates that. He does not believe that college basketball
they do
should
that
ever. They do that in the NBA.
Game. And they do that in the women's game now, too,
I believe so. They do not do it in the men's game. I actually thought they had a timeout there. Butler, did Thad ever think about calling the timeout there? You would have had maybe a second or so. I'm with you. It happened in the Memphis-Vanderbilt game. Don't ask how I got stuck watching the end of the Memphis-Vanderbilt game. But Memphis-Vanderbilt had that exact same thing happen to where they were fouling up 3, and Memphis actually fouled up 3. The guy made the free throw, I believe, to make it a 2-point game, and then he missed it. And they got the rebound and had a chance to win the game, and it could have sunk Penny Hardaway's team, but it didn't.
So again,
that's not
no
what
basketball
happened.
logic,
I'm fine with it.
but
I got no problem with
from
it.
entertainment. I hate team. And now, look, I mean, it cost Butler the game. To be totally fair, I mean,
it did.
So I know that says no logic to Thad Matta and the Bulldogs trying to get their first Big East road win. But I cannot stand when teams are up 3 and here comes the foul game and they purposely miss the second free throw and
I know
the guy airballs it 50% of the time and then it's just a painful, just boring close to a game.
Well, no, because you want to see ball in the air, shot goes up, clock hits 0.
Yeah,
basically that's what we want to see as basketball fans.
Again, we've got Max Bone with the Nerf hoop now in the bathtub. That is what Santa brought Max. And you know how many 3-2-1s I had with Max last night? And he finally got the hang of it a little bit later, and he probably made 50% of his right-handed layups.
Well, that's not bad. It's better than some teams we followed, I'm sure, in the area.
Rosie more of a line drive shooter in the bathtub.
So it's in the bathtub, and then when he's big enough, it goes on the wall, or how is this maturation going to take place?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be primarily, I think, a bathtub item for quite a while. But, at one point last night, we did have it downstairs as well. Small hoop, and, selfishly,
that's all you need.
For mom and dad, I think provides a little entertainment. Rosie kicking it out to the shooter, though, is not something that...
Oh, did she not want to pass? I can see that being the problem.
A little bit of a score-first guard there for Rosie Bowen. Hopefully everyone had a great Christmas. Again, thank you to Rick Carlisle earlier. Andy, your thoughts on a lineup change or two for the Pacers tonight? No Bruce Brown. He did share that with us. A bone bruise.
So you're gonna get Nembhard, and then don't you have to think? I think you've sold me with you go with Nesmith. Perhaps you bring Toppin. I mean, we didn't even talk about Matherin just because he's been so inconsistent the last couple games. Had 2 points the other night, only played 16 minutes. So you'd imagine Matherin doesn't go from 16 minutes to 36 minutes. If that happens, so be it. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at, do you take Toppin out? You put Neesmith in. You know, Nemhard's going to be there already. And then, you know, maybe even minutes, just minutes themselves. Does someone else play, even though it may be coming off the bench? And then, you know, Jarris Walker, he gave about a 2-minute answer. He kind of lit up when you talked about Jarris Walker, what he did. That could be an option as well.
8 o'clock, Pacers-Rockets tonight. Plenty of Colts conversation up on the podcast. Everybody have a great, great Tuesday. Hope you had a great Christmas as well. We'll chat with you tomorrow.
Query and Company.